Hello, this is Chris Haskell from They Live by Film. For those that don't know us, Adam, Zach, and we built a podcast over the last 2 years that's a combination of film discussion from 3 very different perspectives, as well as industry interviews with the leaders in boutique Blu-ray and 4K community. We started with Dev Crocodile, but over time we've been lucky enough to speak with Arrow Video, Severin, Mondo Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome, Radiance, Indicator, most of the OCN partner labels. It's been a blast. You can find us wherever you podcast, and also actually recently as part of Someone's Favorite Production Podcast Network. We hope to see you online.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Disc Connected, here with Krit of Krit Pick Productions. Krit, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I've been, I've watched the show for like a while, and ever since Zach started coming on from the They Live by Film podcast, I've been like heavily invested, and I was always telling him, I was like, put my name in there, like when you're talking, mention my name, I want to go on.
I funny enough, when you and I first started talking, I had seen one of your videos passed around, which it's like one of your more popular videos, especially the last handful of months, and I was blown away. Really like your stuff, and I'll just say right now, everybody pause this video. Link will be in the description below. Please go watch Krit stuff, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Before they do, why don't you tell them what you do over on your channel?
I'm just some idiot who talks about movies. I
That's all we all are.
I pretend to know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But yeah, I do a lot of things, all to do with movies mostly. I break down some movies, but my thing was when I first started doing YouTube and all that kind of stuff, I didn't just want to do kind of what every YouTuber does, which is blank review. That kind of just felt a bit stale to me. Like everyone does a review now. I mean, anyone with a Letterboxd account thinks they're a critic. So, I wanted to do something. And most of my content, the way it centers is I pick a movie, but I try not to give a review of the movie. I'll pick like a theme or something going on in that film that I think is specifically important or interesting. My most popular video is on May-December of last year, and it's called The Psychology and Rationalization of Grooming. And I just think like the way that movie handles the psychology of someone that grooms people and that whole thing, and how they rationalize it in their own mind to make them the victim in that whole thing. And that's what I try to do. And then sometimes, I'll do a tier list and make people upset.
Well, the bulk of them, I would say, fall under more of the visual essay type of format.
Yes, and yeah.
They definitely come across as somebody that appreciates something out of everything they're watching and will be happy to share that with the world. And you definitely have a point of view that I think people will find a lot to value in. I think that literally every single video that I've seen, there's been something that I wouldn't have grasped the first time, and the way that you are sharing these visuals is super effective. It is able to tell a different story through an analytical response to a film, and I think that takes a hell of a lot of talent. So, I mean, first off, thank you for what you're doing, and congratulations for doing it well.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I do think that speaks to a point that, like, not every film that I talk about, because I think it's important to preface as well, I don't just talk about, like, new films that are coming out. I talk about whatever film I feel like talking about. I try not to box myself in, but not every film I talk about is something that I love.
Yeah.
There are movies that either I don't really feel too much about, or, they're just okay or whatever, but there's just something in it that I think it is special. I did a whole video about Dungeons and Dragons from last year as well.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the exact title, but it's something to do with why it's okay to just be good.
Right.
And I feel like, we live in such like a hyperbolic, culture that everything is either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. And I feel like some movies are just good, but that's
Most
okay.
movies.
They are just meant to be good, and that is fine. You know, the bulk of everything we watch is just kind of good. You know, most of our favorite movies are not perfect movies; they're just good movies.
Right.
You know, if you ask like the average person what their favorite movie is, it's always just something like, it's never an incredible movie that you're like, wow. You know, it's never Decision to Leave by Park Chan-wook. You know, it's never that. Their favorite movie is always like The Abyss, you know, or just something, you know, or like They Live by John Carpenter. You're like, that's a good movie. So I feel like that's just a super underappreciated thing, and I think we need to stop saying this is incredible and just go, do you know what, this is good.
I agree. And the best thing is that in many of these good movies, there are great aspects, but also there's a lot of aspects that are subpar in many of those. But you are able to take some of these, theses that you can discover in these films and deliver it in a way that is for everybody, whether you're new to film to be able to appreciate, whether you have been a fan of film for years to be able to appreciate. And that takes a genuine gift. I mean, as somebody that has been working on visual essays for some of these physical media releases now, it's not easy to try to translate these for the everyman essentially to understand. So how do you work your process on these?
Do you know, you make it sound so good, but it's not. Like, the way everything is so like last minute and thrown together. I usually don't know what video I'm going to do 2 days before it's supposed to come out, and then that's when I'm like, right, I need to do a video. And then, you know, I'll write something, or I'll always have ideas. I always have like a movie and something written down. I have like 4 notebooks worth of notes on movies and stuff like that. And then I'll sit down and I'll write the entire thing in one, whether it's a super long video, whether it's kind of short. That's just how the cards fall. And then I go into record, try and do that as quickly as possible, and then I just kind of throw the edit together. It's usually I have like the full movie, and then I just take clips of whatever I'm talking about, you know, and put that in. But I feel like you have to take into account that a lot of people are watching the video. Like a lot of video essays, I feel like, are just made in this idea that people are listening. And a visual aid is so nice. Just even if like you just offhandedly mention a movie, I always like to put the poster quickly on screen so someone has that visual like, oh, okay, so that's what it looks like. And then if they're out somewhere, or, you know, at a store, as you would say, and they see that cover, they're like, oh, that's that movie. Because maybe they don't remember the name, but they'll remember seeing that, you know? So I guess it's that. I didn't really know how to edit before I started doing this. So I've just kind of learned as I'm going.
It seems like there's more of a background there, I will say. So I will say extra kudos on that front. Because,
actually, right. So, bit of a lie, actually. When I was at school at sixth form, which is not a thing in America, but at sixth form, I did a media course, and I made a short movie, a short film. I directed it, acted in it, and I edited it. That's where I first ever picked up Premiere Pro, but I was not good at editing. It is not edited at all very well. It is just cut very choppily. So I guess that's my background, but like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew how to use cut.
Yeah. Sometimes that works. That makes sense. I will say too, you also have the cheat code of having a wonderful British accent, and to most of us dumb Americans, that covers up a lot of the ignorance sometimes.
Do you know, this is actually this is my real voice, like it is, but like it also kind of isn't. You have to present your way. You have to present yourself in a way, right? Like this is how I talk in real life, but there's a lot less UK slang when I'm presenting myself. You know, that I don't dip into my specific regional accent as much.
Right.
You know, I make a real effort to talk in a way that people will respect me. Because I feel like once you start blurring who you are and what you're doing, you know, it becomes very muddled, very messy. You know, it's the same thing as like when you go to work and you talk to like a boss, or you know, if you've got to make a call to the bank, you know, you don't just talk how you would talk to your girlfriend, your friend, your mom. You know, you're talking a different way to different people. So this is how I talk, but it's also slightly edited just to make it more palatable.
It's a form of masking. I mean, to go back to the psychology that you just brought up, a lot of us, you know, you'll have a voice for your boss. Many of us that have worked on phones for customer service jobs, you got a customer service voice, and YouTube voice makes sense. I'm sure we won't hear you call people slags in a visual essay anytime soon.
No, not at all. Not at all. No. To be fair, I've gotten better at it. Like my older videos, there will be some of me slipping in and out because I hadn't really figured out I shouldn't be doing that yet. But you know, it's all a process, right? And it's learning.
Of course. And to get to learning about some of these films, how'd you get here? What is your background in film? Has this always been important to you?
Do you know? Actually, no. I was a music guy. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a musician. You know, music was everywhere. My brother was a producer. He taught me how to produce music. I've been writing songs since I was like 12, 13. I was making them myself on Audacity, just taking free beats and stuff from YouTube and all that stuff. I was heavily into music, and I was getting somewhere with it. I was getting semi-successful. And then COVID happened. And everything kind of died. You know, big artists were only working with big artists because they had to make the money, and the studios was only letting big artists in because they're the only ones that could pay like a big fee and you know, all this stuff. So it kind of killed all momentum. So I stopped doing that. I tried to go to university. That is, sorry. I tried to go to university, but because it was COVID, there was no in-person lessons, so I ended up just dropping out, and I had a lot of time. I just had a lot of time, and I didn't know what to do, so I started watching a lot of movies. I had seen a lot of movies up until that point. I had seen basically everything on the IMDb top 250, because I thought that was like the Bible. And then I had seen what my dad had showed me when I was a kid, which... My dad's a weird guy, but like his taste in movies is kind of phenomenal, and it's way better than it should be for the person that he is. You know, he's just such a bizarre human, like, but he does love some great films. So I got heavily into movies, and I started watching them, and I had just so many like thoughts about them. I needed to put thoughts out there, but there was nobody that I knew that loved movies. So I started just writing kind of reviews, but just specifically my thoughts about weird things I was picking out of these experiences. And then I thought the best way for me to communicate this would just be to make videos. So I started doing that, and then at a certain point I got really into it, but I decided this is not how I should be doing it. So I ended up deleting every video I had made, which at that point wasn't a lot. Granted, it was like 10, 15 videos. And I started from scratch. And I started going from there. So honestly, some of my older videos, which are from like 2022, about 2022. July, I think my oldest video is July of 2022. A lot of those videos, I am still very like fresh into the film scene. You know, I'm still picking into things, and some of those early videos are really interesting to me to look back on, just simply because like the topics do feel like something that a new film fan would think is interesting. Like, I talk a lot about I did a whole video about movie rating systems, not like 18 R-rated, but like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and Letterboxd. because I'm new into film. So I'm trying to see how my thoughts on films are being represented on these popular websites, right? And I decided, oh, I don't like the way you do this. I actually kind of like the way that you do this. And I was going through that whole thing. I was making observations on types of film fans. One of the first videos I ever made is it's like my 7th video. And it blew up at the time. It had like 26,000 views, which my video before has like 100 views. So like, it was just such like a stupid thing to happen so quickly.
Right.
And it was me talking about Film Bros. It's called the Film Bro Effect or whatever. And it's a terrible video. Don't watch it. It's not well made at all.
It's not that bad.
And I don't kind of agree with anything I said in that video anymore, but it is...
That part's funny.
But it is kind of just an analysis of like how these kind of people become these people. You know, like how does one even become a film bro, and what films become film bro films and what they have in common. I just found that really fascinating as someone new into film. Like, how does this happen? So, you know, a lot of stuff was like that. I did a lot of movie diaries as well, where I just went through every film I'd watched that month, and then it got to the point where I was watching like 70 movies a month, and I was like, I can't make these videos anymore. They're going to be like an hour each. I can't do this anymore.
And even then, it's like capsule reviews of everything because you got to fly through it.
If I do, you know, just a minute per film, if I've watched 70, movies that month, that's still over an hour.
Yeah.
You know, so I couldn't do it anymore. So, but yeah, I don't really have any big film experience.
I get it. I was the same way, and honestly, I still kind of view myself as the same way. There's a lot of blank spots there. I mean, I got to ask though, when you mentioned the top 250 on IMDb is viewed as like a Bible, how completing that, how did it feel? Did it change the way that you looked at the 250 that was listed there?
Not at all. Do you know, I recently did a stream. I don't know if I did edit and upload it. I've just checked. Where I did a tier list of the IMDb top 100. I was going to do the top 250, but that stream would just take way too long. I mean, edited down, it's 54 minutes. The actual stream took like, I think, an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, doubling I just couldn't do it. So I did the top 100 recently, and I've just come to the conclusion that I don't like a lot of those movies. I think a lot of them are very, very overrated, and nostalgia kind of drives that list forward. I think The Dark Knight's like number 2 or something on that list. That's crazy. That's not right.
Not at all.
8 of every movie ever made, The Dark Knight is number 2. That's ridiculous. So, I just have a very... I don't like that list. But I also kind of don't like any big list.
Right, yeah.
If it's a person, if it's like a singular person and they're like, this is my top 250, I can respect that, I can understand that. But when it's like a website, it's a compilation of people's view, that gives like the audience this expectancy that it's right.
Yeah.
When there isn't a right. So I mean, I'll talk about this in the Film Bro video, but like people see the IMDb top 250 and go, well, this is the best 250 movies ever made.
It's canon. Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, but it's not. It just isn't, and I feel like more than anything, a main staple of my channel's identity is pushing people to have an opinion. I don't want people watching my content to agree with everything I say. I don't want that. That seems ridiculous. I want you to hate something I say every now and then, because that at least tells me that you're thinking for yourself. You have an actual opinion, and that's all I want. That's all I care about.
On that note, this is something I asked quite a few people, but I would love to hear your answer specifically. What video do you look back that you made that you went, damn, I made that, and I'm really proud of that one?
It's funny, actually, it's really funny you say that. I did a video on M. Night Shyamalan.
Perfect timing.
about a year ago or something. I know it's Zach's favorite video I made. and it's called like Hollywood's Biggest Enigma or whatever. And
Right.
it was just kind of my love letter to Shyamalan, you know, explaining why him so specifically speaks to me, you know, and what he represents as a filmmaker, what he represents to people that aren't him, you know, what his stance is in terms of just the cinematic scope and how important he is to that. Even if you don't love him, you've got to admire some of these things that he's done. So I really loved that video. My video on, what's the movie called? Past Lives. I did a video on Past Lives I really loved.
This is one I was going to bring up specifically because I adored this one.
I really like my Past Lives video. And I know this is like, sounds like a plug, but it's not really. But my last video that I did last week on The Ring 2002.
Yeah.
I just think it's the perfect American remake of a foreign movie. And yeah, I'll kind of go into why. But yeah, just those. There's probably some others, but I don't watch back my videos much because I kind of hate myself. So I don't want to know. I know what my opinion is. I don't need to hear me say it.
Well, and you watch it and hear it enough as you're editing, so I get it. I don't ever spend time with my stuff either.
Oh, actually, I did a video called "Good versus Bad Criticism." Because this was like a big issue that I just had for so long that I hated the way some people like critiqued movies. I just thought there was a good way to do it and a bad way to do it, and it was a belief that I had for so long that was really annoying me. And I was like, I just need to put this out there and get it off my chest. Like, I feel heavy walking around when I read reviews. So I really liked doing that video as well.
Criticism is in a weird place because, like you said, anybody with a Letterboxd account, you can basically claim to be a critic. But what's funny is it's worse than that because we're at a point where I don't know. I mean, somebody's uncle can go see a movie on opening night and post 2 sentences on Facebook and suddenly change the minds of 17 people that were going to go see it. And he says something flippantly and it changes their view and they talk to other people and suddenly a movie tanks because of people that have never seen it saying it's awful. And it's such a weird place that we're in right now.
That happens so often. Sorry. And it kills me. Even with like movies, say like Longlegs. The marketing campaign for Longlegs was so incredible that like everybody was so excited to see it. And then the first people that did get to see it pretty much all went out and went, this movie is fantastic, one of the best of the year. And because of that, obviously some people I hate saying the word contrarian, but they have to not be a part of that group, you know. So they go out and they go, do you know what, Longlegs sucks. And then, you know, a couple of people are like, yeah, no, Longlegs does suck. And then all of a sudden you've got this wave of people seeing that going, oh, maybe Longlegs was overhyped. I shouldn't see that. Maybe I should wait and see it later on when it comes. Right. And then before you know it, Longlegs makes way less money than it was supposed to make. Way less than it was going to make. And yeah, I feel like there's this counterculture that's killing a lot of great movies, and also I don't want to say hyping up bad movies because I don't like saying there's bad movies, but there is. But yeah, like I just feel like we are in a weird space, and I think the way people view critics is super weird. And yeah, I go into this on that video as well, but it's to do with the fact that I think because critics get paid or whatever to judge a movie's quality, people then take it as fact. You know, they take an opinion as an objective view. Whereas I think the job of every critic is to emphasize that this is their subjective view of it. Roger Ebert has this great little clip where he's talking about what makes good criticism to him. And one of the main things he says is your perspective. The thing most critics and reviewers and whatever don't really realize, not just in film, but people that review books or, you know, stuff like that. The majority of people watching these are not going to see the thing that you're talking about.
Right.
You know, a lot of the time people will read a review, like especially back in the day when he was, you know, writing in newspapers. Like people would read these reviews and never go and see the movie. So you have to make it entertaining in and of itself to just read. And and he says, but a part of making that entertainment is your perspective. You need to personalize every message, because when Roger Ebert says a movie is bad, that is not him saying, don't go and see this movie, it's terrible. Right. That's him saying, I think this movie is terrible for these dumb reasons. Go and make your own mind up. You know, that's why I end every video with, but that's just me. What do you think? Have you seen it? Have you not? Will you? Won't you? Why? Right. You know, etc., etc. Like because I always just want the conversation going, whether it's this movie's ass, whether this movie's great. I just want it to go.
It's a good point. One thing that I wanted to throw out there about that too is we talk about critics as if they're reporting facts, when in all reality, critics are, in a sense, they're translators. These are people looking at art and translating what they get out of it. But the hard part is when we think of the word translators, most of us are thinking about language, which there's a clear definition of every spec that you can look at for that. And when you're looking at art, there's no definitions. Like there's nothing that is defined. When even something as simple as like a doodle is released to the world, that is up for everybody to interpret in their own ways. And all of these critics come from their own set of circumstances, their own experiences, their own preconceived notions, which we all have. Yeah. And no matter what, they're just there to take those notions and translate a film or a book or a TV show or whatever and deliver that to the masses. And it's up to you to decide to watch it or to not, or to not even that really. It's to appreciate it or to not, or to see what you think of it. And we probably need to speak about it in terms of that, especially nowadays, because the film criticism has changed so much since the internet became our go-to place.
I mean, you are absolutely right. I stopped giving movies numbered scores in my videos maybe about a year ago or so, just because I felt like a lot of people would go onto a video and skip the whole review just to jump to the end to see what you gave it, you know?
Yep.
And I feel like the score part of any review is the least important part. So for me, I just started negating it completely. You are not going to get whether I think this movie is an 8 or a 2. What you're going to get is just completely my perspective on it. You're going to have to hear me out, good and bad, and then make up your mind on whether you feel like this is worth your time or not. And that's also why, like, I do the whole, I pick an aspect of the film and try and talk my way through that, just because it's not based on fact, but it's less based on opinion. Like when I'm talking about the perfect American remake, which is The Ring, I'm going through it scene by scene or, emotion by emotion and going, this is why, I think this. Consider the color grading and the effort that went into this, right? And what specific mood they're attempting to create with that and the lengths they went through to make that. And then look at the framing of the shot. It does this and puts this here and the blocking and all this stuff. And it's there to evoke this emotion, which you should be feeling. And I try to talk about stuff that a film consciously does for you to subconsciously take in. Like a frame is supposed to make you feel a way, even if you're not conscious that the frame is making you feel that way. You just know that you do. So like I try to explain it rather than dictate it, and say this is good because it does this. I'd rather just say that it's doing this to make you feel this way. Whether it's successful or not is up to you, because that's your experience. This is mine. I just think it's effective. And
exactly. Yeah. The thing that made me discover you is because you did a video on physical media. And as our viewers can see, we've got movies in the background. We got some vinyl in the background.
Oh, we do. Yes. We also have some CDs there.
Oh, look at that behind you. Yeah.
We got some books over there, which are off camera. And we have like this whole thing here is consoles and video games. Big
Love
physical
it.
media guy.
So, before they go watch your video, why is physical media important to you?
Oh, wow. You say that when the video is called The Importance of Physical Media.
Yep, on purpose.
But I think the main state, the main message is preservation.
Right.
You know, nobody can preserve art that's important to you better than you. There is tons of streaming services, and I get it. When they first came out, like with Netflix, you know, that was the big thing, you know, because I was a young teen when Netflix came out, like properly. So I remember like it becoming a thing.
Right.
And in theory, it sounds incredible. Every movie basically ever made in one place for one subscription fee. And that sounds incredible. You save on storage, you know, and it's all just here. But the problem was it was such a great idea that everybody wanted to do it. And when everybody does it, it's not a great idea anymore, you know, because everything is either over here or over here, and the sequel to that thing is over here. And then, oh, sorry, you want to watch the series that comes out? Oh, that's over here, so you're going to have to pay for this one as well. And then, you know, it goes round and round, and you have to have 5 or 6 streaming services to maybe watch the movie you want to watch. Whereas I feel like you should always just go out and buy the movie you want, because then you always have it. You never have to worry about streaming taking that away from you. And also there's the whole worry of, you know, that they're creating these things and putting them on streaming services, and that's where they live. And now if Zaslav decides that he wants a tax break, he'll just get rid of that movie. That movie doesn't exist anymore, legally speaking. It's gone. You know? So unless you pirate it, it just doesn't exist. It's gone. And that's very worrying. I don't... Killers of the Flower Moon from last year, one of the most important movies that came out last year. I think one of the most important movies of the decade. It is Martin Scorsese in his very, very, you know, late years. He's coming to the end. We know this. Like, it's not nice to think about, but it's just what it is. You know, he's a man in his 80s. He's not got like a massive amount of time left, and he spent all this time and effort crafting this film that he felt so passionate about, you know, because he was supposed to stop after The Irishman, I believe. I feel like that was a thing that he was saying. But then when he heard the story and he read these books, he just felt so compelled to do this. And he did it, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was a stroke of genius. One of the most empathetic and effective movies made this decade. It's absolutely stellar. That movie only lives on Apple TV. If Apple TV decides to dissolve because it's not profitable, it goes. That movie disappears because it has no physical release. This is not just happening to movies that are, you know, they cost $5 million to make and they got thrown onto Disney Plus, which I would argue anyway are just as important as Martin Scorsese's. All are, you know, because that could just mean the world to one person, and now they don't have it. But the fact that a film that important, that culturally significant, you know, it was in theaters, a lot of people went to go and see it, could just disappear one day. Because because I got a comment the other day about they have Apple TV because they know Apple's never going to go under. And that is true. Apple is never going to go under, more than likely. But Apple is not Apple TV.
Right.
You know, Apple TV is its own, like, subsidiary. It has the smallest catalog out of the big 7 streaming services. It costs just as much, and it doesn't have a backlog. You know, it's one of those movies that only has what it itself makes. So unless people care about that thing, you know, they're not going to get that, which means it's very worrying. It has also the lowest market share out of the big 7 at 8%, I believe, behind Paramount Plus. And Paramount Plus is on its last legs, right? You know, because they just had the whole Skydance acquisition. They're shaky. So to think Apple TV is behind that, and you think it's so safe that these very incredible pieces of art are so safe here, is outrageous. A movie I did a video on, The Tragedy of Macbeth, from the one half of the Coen brothers, starring Denzel Washington. I love that movie. I think it's the best Shakespeare adaptation out of every single one that was ever made.
Wow.
No physical release at all.
Yep.
Insane.
Does not exist, basically.
Yeah, it just doesn't exist. And I think that's a scary and a big issue that I don't think people are really considering the weight of right now.
Not to say it like as a to correct or anything like that, but just in case you don't know, and so you can be aware, Killers of the Flower Moon does have a release in Italy that you can pick up. So you may want to check that out.
That's crazy.
It is. Yeah, it got a 4K release out of Italy.
Why in Italy? Is there a reason behind that?
Supposedly some of the, I don't know if they acquired this, but a lot of the copyright laws are a little loosey-goosey there. So Italy's also the only, speaking of Apple TV, well, I guess now that I say that, maybe it's something with Apple. They're also the only place that got a physical release of Coda. And that won the Oscar for Best Picture. Like, how is that? That is
insane.
That's mind-blowing that an Oscar-winning Best Picture film only exists on disc out of Italy.
Yeah, no, there's just something about the whole thing that makes me very uncomfortable. I understand that it's a lot of space because it is.
Yeah.
It takes up a lot of space. And
to be fair to the people that love streaming, even streaming takes up a lot of space. Server space is not cheap. It's not great for the environment. It's not small for the company. But to take the sentence that you said, like, Killers of the Flower Moon lives on Apple TV, I'm going to add to that and say, until it doesn't. And that's the craziest thing, is these live on my shelf. And yeah, the same is true until they don't. Somebody could come in and break into my house and steal it. I could be in a flood. I could be in a tornado. I live in the Midwest. That's possible. However, those are a lot less likely than a studio just getting rid of something.
Also, that may be true. Right. Your copy could get destroyed, but there's always another copy.
Yep.
You're not the only person that owns those movies that are on your shelf.
Exactly.
If Apple TV lose Killers of the Flower Moon, it's gone because they're the only place that host it. It's not like Killers of the Flower Moon, it got took off Apple TV, but don't worry, Netflix has it. That's not how that works.
There's 8 places as backup.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a damn good point. The other one that I want to throw out there, too, especially because you're a music person, is censorship. That's been such a big thing over the last few years. And being somebody that is related to the UK somewhat, my big example of this is, I think it was Lizzo, like a year ago. She put out a song that had the word spaz in it, which is not a good word in the UK. And she went in and re-recorded it and changed it. And what's crazy, 20 years ago, that couldn't have happened. That everybody owns those discs or vinyl. You can't go change that on their back.
And I think my point on that one specifically actually does kind of speak to a larger problem also about censorship. It's just that spaz is not like, it's a negative word, but it's not like a slur.
Right.
Like, it's kind of used in the same way like someone would have said the R word like 10 years ago. Right. But it's just not had that same backlash because it never had that connotation to like a disability or anything. It was just kind of related to being idiotic. You would just call, your brother a spaz for being an idiot. Like if you fell down the stairs, you're like, you're such a spaz. So like, that's just how that works. It's not like a crazy word. If you say it to your boss, you're not going to get fired. Like, so the fact that whoever decided that was like such a grand issue that it got censored, that it got changed, is scary.
It is.
Because it's realistically not even that big of an issue. It just wasn't. I remember when that happened.
Who's controlling all this now?
Yeah. I remember when that happened and I looked on Twitter and everyone was like, what? Is that a bad word? And we all just kind of got lost for a second, like, wait, can we not say that anymore? And then everyone was like, no, that one's fine, right? We didn't lose that one.
Oh yeah, it's terrifying that literally some executive could be dictating our speech, our culture, what's acceptable, everything. And obviously, like, The UK and the US both have this in common. We both have ratings boards that are kind of already doing that to a point.
Yeah.
They get to choose what's released, and that's already frowned upon by everybody that appreciates art. But on a smaller scale, when one company can choose, no, if you're a part of this company, we're never going to allow the word spaz. Like, why? Why are we going to that granular of a level?
Yeah, it's so. Do you know, actually, this is like off topic, but also on. But Zach told me something the other day that every Alien movie that got released in the UK, which is all of them, I don't know why I said it like that, has been, they've all received a age rating of 15, except for Alien Covenant, which is 18. Whereas in the US, every single one of them, I can't remember what he said, but every single one of them have been R-rated, except for, I think, one, which was like Alien Resurrections or something.
Right.
And I just thought, like, that's so bizarre, like, how lenient we are in comparison. Because I thought, like, we would be much harsher to movies than, America is. But apparently not.
I think there's just different standards. In the U.S., all violence is on the table, totally fine. If it's just violence, PG-13 all the way. But if we say the word fuck twice, that's an immediate R. If there's any sexual innuendos at all, that's almost an immediate R. It's crazy what they have prioritized. It's wild.
Yeah, that is quite bizarre. I mean, again, this is like so far off topic, but I just thought, like, it would just be different here. There was this case way long ago called the Jamie Bulger case, and it was about these two boys. I can't remember their ages, but they weren't very old. They were like 10, 11, 13 years old, whatever. And they assaulted and killed this child, like 2-3 years old, like a baby or whatever. Yeah. And their whole defense was they did it because of Child's Play 3. And like that's such like a famous case in the UK. I mean, it happened like before I was even born. Yeah. And I know near enough every detail about it. It's such like a famous case here. So I always thought like something like that would just impact our rating systems and stuff like that, and what can be shown and what can't. But apparently it didn't, which I just feel like the backlash against that is not as great as I thought it would be. Especially at that time as well, when, there was a lot of backlash about a lot of things about, in rap music, they started adding like the parental advisory stickers to certain albums because of the 2 Live Crew album that had naked women on the cover, basically. Like censorship was like a big thing at the time. So I just thought like that would impact much harder than it did. And yeah, ever since he said the alien thing, I've just been spiraling about that. So I feel like I'm going to do a video about that at one point.
Sweet. Yeah, and what's crazy is the BBFC seems to be getting more relaxed. Like, there are videos that have been banned outright for like 18, 30 years something that are now able to get like physical media releases and theatrical showings.
It's so random. It's like, in general, I feel like things feel like they should be getting more intense and they're not. Like in the 80s when like The Evil Dead was banned everywhere and The Exorcist was banned everywhere, and then you watch them now and you're like, they're not that bad. Why are they banned everywhere? But like you don't hear of that now. There's not been a movie that's been released in like the past 20 years where it's like it is banned in like every country but Russia. It doesn't happen anymore.
Not at all.
That would be great marketing, though. Like, imagine, Longlegs during their campaign was like, by the way, it's also banned everywhere.
Even though you're about to go watch in the theater, it's banned everywhere. Trust
you
us.
sit down in the cinema, and this is the first thing that comes on screen. This is illegal, by the way. Don't tell anyone. Shush.
You're breaking the law. Oh, that would be pretty great marketing. Speaking of great marketing, I think we should get to our topic at hand and discuss our auteur that we wanted to discuss today, Mr. M. Night Shyamalan. And yes, you do have a video about him, so why don't you share with everybody your fascination with Shyamalan's work?
Well, I have several videos on M. Night Shyamalan. He's the filmmaker that I think I have the most videos about. I have about 4 or 5. One about strictly him, but then I made a video on Knock at the Cabin. There's a video on The Visit, but it's not so much about The Visit. It's more just what The Visit meant for his career and stuff like that. It is so difficult to explain why M. Night Shyamalan works for me. Like, those videos probably do it best because I spent hours thinking about it and then writing and rewriting, but he's a filmmaker that swings so hard for the fences every single time. He does not care what's popular. He doesn't care what you want. He has an idea. He has a vision. He's ever evolving. You know, the camera work in one movie is not going to be the same camera work that comes in his very next movie 2 years later. They will be completely dissimilar movies. One will be like a horror movie with some very experimental like visuals and stuff like that, and then the next one will just be like a drama. You know, it'll just be a regular drama or just some kind of like weird methodical thing that he's just thought an insane amount about, like more than he probably should have, you know. Right. And I will say this, even in M. Night Shyamalan movies that I don't love, there is something so specific to them that I can appreciate, you know. And after his career tanked in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, where everyone started making fun of him, unjustly so. Also, I would like to add, I would
say that too.
Yeah, very unjustly so. This is what my video about The Visit was, but no one wanted to hire him. No producers wanted to touch him. No studios wanted to come near him. So what he decided was, okay, I need to make a movie. And because that's what everyone does when they're in a hole, right? He's like, I need to make a movie. This is how I come back. And everyone was like, okay. And what he did was he put up his house as collateral in a loan from the bank. And I'm not going to profess to remember how much money it was for, but it was for a couple million. And, you know, he gathered all the money together basically himself to make this very scrappy found footage horror movie. You know, very boots to the ground original movie. You know, you would think it was someone's first ever film. You wouldn't watch it and think, oh yeah, this guy made The Sixth Sense. You know, it feels like someone's first movie. Yeah. And it was so successful, you know, it made its money back like something stupid, like 60 times or whatever, you know, and he very easily could have got trapped in that same cycle again and joined the corporate world, paired with a producer that gave him bucket loads of money and said, make this movie and do it. But he didn't. And I respect that because I know how hard that temptation must have been. But he said, no. I am going to take that money that I earned and I'm going to put that into my next movie. And he did exactly that, and he made Split, which then made like a phenomenal amount of money. And then he did the same thing again. He took all that money and then he put it into his next project, and then he took all that money and then he put that into his next project. And he's pretty much the biggest independent filmmaker on the planet. Like, he only ever makes a movie if his last movie made a lot of money, you know.
Which, let's be fair, all of them have. Yeah. Let's say that right now. Nothing has been a failure. Once he made his first movie that was big, which was The Sixth Sense. The two before that, you know, nobody knew who he was, so we get that. But from Sixth Sense on, everyone has at least doubled the budget, which is, how many filmmakers can say that? It's
true, and I don't think there's a single filmmaker that is. Do you know what's so ballsy about it as well? Is that he does all this whilst never playing it safe,
right?
Ever once. You know, like, he started to get his mojo back, right? He did something that was fairly safe, but still like fairly original with The Visit, and then he put that into Split, which is a safe enough movie. He did swing for the fences in that last 30 minutes. He really did. But in general, the movie is not like anything crazy. And then that I think when that made a lot of money, that's when he gained real confidence back, because then he immediately went and made Old. And Old is one of the most bizarre movies I think I've ever seen. It is so odd that like a person made it. Like, it is so specifically bizarre that like, you know, only a single person knew what was going on when making it.
Right.
You know, he had this whole thing in his head, and it's so specific. And it's just so bizarre that he counted everything on Old making money. You know, everything was, and then after that he was like, do you know what? I'm gonna make Glass. And Glass, in theory, sounds like a solid bet because, you know,
Right.
it's a
franchise film.
Yeah, it's the final movie in Unbreakable, The Split, which were both very well received. So it seems like a fairly bankable idea, but the movie itself is not at all what you think it would be. You know, It's not the safe option to make that movie. It's just such a bizarre way to think of taking that franchise. He could have made such a safe and hugely successful movie, and still he stuck to his guns and he went, no, I am making an M. Night Shyamalan movie. You are not, you don't know what's going on. Like, and it just works, you know, and he just keeps doing this. You know, Knock at the Cabin was a big swing for the fences, and his new movie Trap, you know, it looks so intensely like him.
Yeah.
You know, it's something so bizarre that I couldn't imagine anyone else doing, because he makes these very specific, like, feelings and concepts on a grand scale. And I think he's the only one that can do that, you know, because Martin Scorsese is never going to make a weird movie.
Right.
You know, James Cameron is not going to make a weird movie. They're going to make very great movies, but they are very, like, I don't want to say grounded, but grounded emotionally. The very tried and true techniques that they've been using forever. They're
meant to be blockbusters.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalan is the only filmmaker of his caliber, of his status, that is still massively experimenting with what he puts out. You know, I don't want to say that Martin Scorsese is playing it safe, but he is, because he knows what he's doing, and he's using techniques he's been using for like 40 years. Yep. You know, Martin Scorsese is not suddenly going to discover a new shot. You know, he knows exactly what he's doing, and that's how his films read. They feel like someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Whereas M. Night Shyamalan, every now and then you will sit there and go, does he know what he's doing? Does he? Does he know? But
so much so that it's always surprising when he shows up in every one of his movies.
Yeah, and then, like, you know, you'll watch that movie three times later and you go, do you know what? He knew exactly what he was doing. He crushed this. So, yeah, that's
true.
I've never told a long story short in my life. Just
that's
so
totally
you know.
Fine. This is a show about tangents. I love them.
Yeah, every story's long story long. So,
well, to be completely clear, I'm not sure about you. I've never been able to see Praying with Anger or Wide Awake.
I have seen both.
I will love to hear your thoughts. Those will not be on my list when we're ranking. So
that is fine.
Unfortunately, I wish I had. Especially, I hear Praying with Anger is rather good.
I should say I did a M. Night Shyamalan ranking video.
Yep,
I
purposely have not watched it yet.
But just so you know, that ranking is invalid. My ranking has completely changed.
Ooh, maybe I should.
Yeah, so anyone can go and watch that, but like it, especially my opinion on some movies. Very outdated. I hated Old when I made that movie. I like Old now. So I watched that video back yesterday and I was like, oh, you're an idiot.
I did want to say too, before we go into it, that it's when you're talking about somebody who really only has 13 main films, a lot of people are going to think like spots 11, 12, 13, you must hate them. There are 3 on this list that I don't love, but most of these are genuinely good movies, and I think most people would enjoy them at least a little bit.
Yeah, I should preface
especially
that.
if you don't let critics like powder what you're thinking about these films.
M. Night Shyamalan is my favorite filmmaker. I should make that very clear. You know, I have a lot of favorite filmmakers. Sam Raimi is probably my second. I love Wes Craven, but there's just something about M. Night, and even like his lesser movies, there is just something in them. You know, there's a secret ingredient, there's a spice that I've never tasted before, and it's not in any other restaurant in the world. You know, right. I can only get it from this one very weirdly specific place that shut down a couple years ago and then randomly came back.
All right. Well, we haven't planned exactly how to do this, but since you have 15 on your list and I have 13, why don't we start with your bottom two, and then I'll join the fun at number 13.
Okay, sure. And neither of which are the movies you haven't seen.
Great. This is going to be perfect.
Yeah, it's great format.
Yep.
So, my 15 is After Earth. I think After Earth's biggest crime is that it's boring. You know, you can't say that about any other M. Night Shyamalan film. He doesn't make boring movies. Even
That's
movies
true.
that like you don't like as much, there is just an interest in it. And I think the main reason was that After Earth is not really an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Right.
He owed Will Smith a favor. Will Smith thought of the concept. Will Smith wanted to be in it. He wanted to put his kid in it. You know, M. Night owed him. He said, sure, I'll direct this movie. It is a complete Will Smith vehicle that has Shyamalan's name on it. But you can tell, just when watching it, that Shyamalan does not have a lot of control about what's going on here. He is simply pointing the camera in places, but he does not get to do any of the fun stuff he wants to do. Yep. You know, it feels like, say, you know, when I'm making videos, I'll make like a lot of videos that I really, really am passionate about. And then I'll look at the views and I'll go, I am struggling right now. Yep. No one is watching any of this. And then I go, okay, right. I need to make a video about something popular, something safe, just to get me back in the green a little bit. That's what After Earth feels like. It feels like he got to play with his toys for a bit. He got to do whatever he's wanted. And then suddenly he was like, oh, right, I have to like maybe make a movie now. So then he got forced to just make a movie he didn't want to make. And that's just how it reads. Jaden Smith can't act. He sucks. He was better in The Karate Kid than he was in this.
Right.
He's just so emotionless. Will Smith, I think, entered a different dimension when he was on the set of this movie. He has a weird accent that he can't even keep up, but no one told him to do it. He's so persistent on doing this accent that no one else is doing. He is the only one doing the accent, and he still can't really do it. No one's asking you to do this, Will. You've made a choice that you can't even stick to. What are you doing? And everything that he does is either no emotion, just a complete robot, or he's yelling a lot. There is no nuance. It is just boring. It's a landscape, very bland. It reminds me of 65 from last year with Adam Driver. Yes. But at least in that movie, Adam Driver is doing something. I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing something, you know, that makes it at least every now and then enjoyable. Also, 65 ends with like a dinosaur's face getting melted by a hot geyser. That was fun. After
one of the worst movie titles ever, though.
Yeah, no, it is. I couldn't figure out why it was called 65 for the long. I was like, I didn't get it, and then the movie, like, I was in the cinema because I paid to see that movie, and I sat there, and it came up 65 million years, whatever, and I'm like, oh, it was just one of those like, oh, so dumb, but. Yeah, this is not about 65, but yeah, it's just a nothing movie. You know, it's not atrocious by any standards. Like there are much worse movies out there, but like it just kind of feels like nothing. I dare anybody to watch this movie and then 6 months later come back and tell me what you thought of it. You
Right.
will not remember a single scene. I was watching my ranked video, and because After Earth wasn't last when I made that, but I was watching just the clips I was using of After Earth and going, I've never seen any of this movie. I've seen that movie like 3 times. I didn't remember a single thing in that edit, so
It's a brave
It's
soul
whatever,
to watch
man.
it 3 times.
it's you know, I like Shyamalan, you know.
Yeah, I get that.
So anytime there's, I think I might be slightly autistic a little bit, because like I have this thing where it's like if I want to watch an M. Night Shyamalan movie, I have to watch every single one of them. I can't just put on Signs. I need to watch everything, and if I'm watching everything, I'm watching it in order. So like I don't know why I have to do that. I'm like, man, I really want to watch Unbreakable. Well, guess I have to watch Praying with Anger, Wide Awake, The Sixth Sense before I can do that. Yeah, I don't know why I'm like that, but
Interesting.
yeah. So I've seen After Earth a fair amount, but yeah, it's just kind of nothing. It's
Got it.
you know, whatever.
All right, then number 14.
14 is, by no surprise, The Last Airbender. Now, I like this movie more than most people like this movie. I don't think it's one of the worst movies ever made. I don't understand why that's a thing. I don't know why that's like one of the labels that's been just attached to this movie. It is nowhere near one of the worst movies ever made. It is visually very fun, especially during like the final act, you know, when Ong lifts the whole ocean or whatever. It's a very cinematic and epic moment, you know. And considering M. Night doesn't deal with overt cinematic, you know, films. He doesn't deal with like a big scale, you know. He's not James Cameron. He does his very quaint movies, and I think in The Last Airbender he handled that jump to scale much greater than most filmmakers would have. And those moments, you know, like when Aang lifts the ocean, it's just, I do get goosebumps when he does it. It's just such an impressive moment, and I think he frames it exactly right. I think the main problem with The Last Airbender is the nerds who are upset that it's not the TV show that it was never going to be.
Yep.
The thing is, everybody wants this movie to be a good adaptation of the show. That will never happen, ever. It doesn't exist. Do you know what's a good version of the show? The show. Just watch the show. If you want a very, very condensed version of that show, it's this movie. Its biggest problem is that it's trying to cram like a season of television into, you know, a 1 hour and 40 runtime or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is just going to be a task, you know, at all. I don't think it works very well. He changes a lot of the names, pronunciations for some reason. But also, I don't think he watched the show, really. I don't think he did. I think he read the Wikipedia and he went, oh, I got this. And then he every now and then scanned through an episode for visual reference. I don't think he sat through a whole season of The Last Airbender. I just don't think it happened. So, yeah, whatever. Some of the acting choices are weird. Some of the framing's weird. You know, we still experimented, which I also think is a big problem, is that, not for me at least, but for most people, because this is supposed to be a big blockbuster, people are not used to their mainstream blockbusters by, you know, big names being experimental.
Yeah.
You know, he does like a lot of weird framing choices. There's this like one very specific shot of, I can't remember anyone's name, but the guy's sitting at a throne and another guy speaking, the guy from Spider-Man 2, that guy, he's speaking, and the camera is like only got the hand in focus. The guy speaking is out of focus, and but it's just such like a random shot. And when I'm watching that, I see that and I go, that's interesting. Why has he done that? But I think most people, you know, watch that and go, why is he doing that? I want to see the guy talking. You know, like blockbusters just aren't meant to be tainted, I think, for most people. So I think its reputation soured. And people already had it out for Shyamalan at that point anyway. Yeah. They would have used any excuse. This movie could honestly be good, and people still would have trashed on it. You know, they just had enough. Which I still don't understand, but it's whatever. So yeah, you know, it's down at the bottom, but I don't think it's bad. I think it has a lot of good stuff in it. It's, you know, it's fine. Plus it's funny. People don't mention this enough, but M. Night Shyamalan has a great sense of humor.
There's some great humor in these.
Yeah, he has like such funny, like, this is the thing as well, like, people think his movies are funny and they don't think he's in on it.
Right.
You know, they think they're laughing at him when they don't realize that he's trying to make you laugh. And I think, yeah, that's the case with The Last Airbender. I think there's a lot of funny humor in it that people just missed. You know, they think it's just the movie being stupid. So, yeah. Also, you know, we got to take into account real quick that we're adults. This movie is not for us.
Right.
You know? Why don't you show this to a kid who has never seen The Last Airbender, the show or anything? You know, he's 11, 12 years old. Show him this movie. He's probably going to like it.
Yeah.
Because that's who it's meant for. You know? Yeah. So I feel like that's also something that needs to be taken into account. You know, it's his only film, I would say, that's meant for children. It's a Nickelodeon movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I can see that.
Yeah, I think people need to take into account as well that, like, I hate it when people try to, like, really critique, like, a new Pixar movie, and I'm like, you're 34. Let it go. It's okay if Elemental wasn't your thing, man.
I love that you say "let it go." All right, I will throw in mine here. Yep. I will say my number 13, which I'm glad we have a lot of the same observations. It's going to make some of this easy because I don't have to repeat it. Also, After Earth. The one thing that I had written down after this that I don't think I felt the first time, but I love that you kind of alluded to this in a way, is that this movie is oddly a vanity project. But we don't normally get vanity projects that aren't from the director. Yeah. And so to have it be somebody that's literally only on camera that's for the vanity project, it feels disjointed because it's not connected. It's not from the same vision. It's somebody else holding the camera trying to translate what he's being directed to do. And because of that, a lot of it just doesn't work. It's not memorable. It's just sort of there. And so here it is, sort of there at the bottom of my list.
Wow, that was way more concise than me.
What is your number 13 then?
My number 13 is one that you haven't seen, which is Wide Awake.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, I guess, Wide Awake is technically M. Night Shyamalan's first theatrical movie. Praying with Anger is like a student film, so it doesn't massively count. But, you know, Wide Awake is like a real movie. I also, by the way, I like that Wide Awake was not seen by, like, anyone. So M. Night Shyamalan has this weird pass that The Sixth Sense gets to be his first movie, just because no one remembers Wide Awake. It's the same way, like, Zach Cregger, people, like, say his first movie is Barbarian. I just like that. Like, it's so funny. Like, oh yeah, his first movie, Barbarian, sure.
At least his first movie was good.
Yeah. Yeah, Wide Awake, it's fine. Like, I can't... It's such like a weird nothing movie. Like, it's not bad, it's not good, it's just... It's there. You know, it's right. Like your mom's favorite movie. It's okay. It's just about this kid whose grandfather passes. So he goes to, like, this Catholic school, and he's trying to find some sign that, one, God exists, and two, that God is speaking to him, saying that his grandfather is somewhere. It's a very nice little movie. You know, it feels like a Chris Columbus movie. You know, when I'm watching it, I feel like this would have been handled much better by Chris Columbus. It feels like it's just missing some of that magic. Aside from that, it's kind of whatever. It has Rosie O'Donnell. Like, can you expect much? It's okay. There's some good moments. It does represent something, though, that I think is very underrated in Shyamalan's catalogue, which is his directing of children. He is so fantastic at working with children, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. he managed, like, I think if you watch any M. Night Shyamalan movie, you will not find a bad child actor in them. They all give a very good performance, except for After Earth with Jaden Smith, who, granted, is old enough to know better anyway. So, you know, there's this whole thing. He's very good at directing children, and I can't remember the actor's name in Wide Awake, but he does give a very, very nice performance that does feel like it's out of a Chris Columbus production, kind of like Home Alone or the first Harry Potter movie or whatever. But yeah, no, it's just a sweet little movie, but it's kind of just forgettable. It's whatever.
I had no idea about this one, so I was looking it up before we were doing this. I was blown away to find out that this thing had a $6 million budget. Like, they put money into this. Obviously, a lot of it is the cast. I mean, Rosie O'Donnell, Dennis Leary.
That's it, yeah.
They were names at the time, and I'm sure that those were probably the bigger parts of the budget there.
Yeah, I mean, that's Joseph Cross. That's the kid's name. He grew up to do like more bigger films. You know, he was in Licorice Pizza and Mank and Lincoln and stuff like that. You know, he went on to be a name, but he
that's a resume.
at the time,
damn.
yeah, at the time he wasn't a huge star. So you know, that's great for him. And also Dennis Leary. Now that you said the name, like it's clicked to me. I'm pretty sure he plays the kid's father. Every scene with him is delightful. Dennis Leary is quite good in the movie.
Interesting. I mean, it's crazy that this kid. I mean, just the resume, like that's blowing my mind. To work with Shyamalan and Spielberg and Fincher, that's crazy.
It's quite weird. Also, I do just want to say as well, the poster of Wide Awake has like Rosie O'Donnell in it, which may lead you to believe that she's in this movie a lot. She is not. She's like, she's in like maybe 2 or 3 scenes. Like, she's just a teacher at the Catholic school. Like,
I mean, she was a huge star in the 90s, though, so I'm sure they were banking on that.
The kid's best friend has like more screen time than Rosie O'Donnell. Like, so yeah, but you know, it's a sweet little movie. It's okay, inoffensive.
I kind of want to see it. Number 12 on mine. So far, we are in alignment. It is The Last Airbender, and what's interesting here is I've never seen the show. I've never been super interested to see the show, so that didn't taint anything for me. And I also want to say that we're going to have, for me at least, that conversation about one other film on this list, which, if you know Shyamalan's filmography, it should be obvious about the other adaptation I'm talking about. This is not something that critics talked me out of or anything. I agree with literally everything you said here. It just, something wasn't quite working at 100% on this one. And I did notice one thing that stuck out, because I rewatched most of these for this. He has this really odd situation with his filmography. Is his films, and actually you talked about it slightly, his films are very high stakes. Like, they will affect a lot of people based on the story, but they're done in a very small scale high stakes method. Last Airbender seems to have the opposite problem. It feels small stakes on an epic scale, and therefore doesn't feel appropriate.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how to digest that with the rest of his filmography, because it feels just so not him. It feels so different. So I don't know, and it's not even about like failed expectations. It's just, it doesn't feel like he is suited for that type.
The thing is, like, the main problem with that, like, it's small stakes that's on a big scale. That is something that he loses in the adaptation. So I did watch The Last Airbender when I was growing up, you know, because it was popular when I was a kid.
Right.
The deal is, like, because you have a season with this character, you know, you have a lot of time with him.
Right.
His arc shows you that progression so much more, that these events in those final episodes of that season do feel huge, you know, because you've seen the complete journey of getting to that point. It's been a long, drawn out process, whereas in the movie, you know, he's jumping from place to place and he's not really getting that development that makes those final moments important. You know, you don't see the struggle that he goes through to attain that moment, you know? So that's just something that gets lost in the adaptation. And that comes with... I feel like he could have made a trilogy for that first season. I think you could have cut it down to a good trilogy. But yeah, for one movie, it's just not enough. You lose so much of that development.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is going to sound like I'm not watching anything here, but I've never seen Game of Thrones either, but it feels like the same sort of issue that I've heard from close friends that love Game of Thrones, is the first 4 or 5 seasons, you lived with these people, and the journeys were long and epic, and then the last couple seasons, it was, oh, we're going to travel the length of the entire country in an episode. And so you don't get those struggles. They don't mean as much.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen Game of Thrones either, though I have tried to watch it like 4 or 5 times and I just can't get into it, but I am watching House of the Dragon currently with my girlfriend, and it is very good. I really like House of the Dragon, so I'm going to try Game of Thrones again.
Nice.
I think the main problem with the Game of Thrones thing was that they had books to base this show on, and then that last season they didn't have anything, so they just decided to make up their own and it was not good. They should have just delayed the season, you know, or something. Yeah, some stuff's just better left, you know, not finished.
Right. Well, let's finish this then. What is your number 12?
My number 12 is Lady in the Water. Now, this movie, I think, gets a bad rap. It is not nearly as bad as its reputation would have you believe. Also, technically, this is an adaptation. It is an adaptation of the story that he used to tell his daughter at bedtime. So, bearing that in mind, a lot of this movie starts to make sense. You know, it is the most fairy tale like in Shyamalan's filmography. You know, it feels very personal.
Yeah.
You know, and that makes sense when considering that it's based on these stories that he used to tell his daughter, you know, because when you're making up a story to tell, you know, a child at night, what you have is your experience, and you're trying to mold your experiences into a fairy tale to express to a child. That's why in this movie you have like a whole character that's a critic, and he's the worst. But like there are creatures that kill people in this movie, and the critic is still the worst creature in this movie. It's just vindictive and horrible. And I also think like because of that, that's one of the reasons, at least, why it was received so poorly. I think critics really did not like themselves being portrayed in that movie, you know?
Yeah.
Because that dude is being portrayed as someone that is a know-it-all, that is very antagonistic, that's very off-puttish, but also he doesn't know anything. He's a bit of an idiot. He's a bit of a loser. And that's just Shyamalan's view of critics at the time, which I think is, to be fair, quite warranted. But it is super fairy tale-like. There are some beautiful aspects to this. I think Paul Giamatti is giving a great performance in this movie. Bryce Dallas Howard, one of the most gorgeous women ever made. They should make more. She is fantastic in this movie. It's just, it's nice. I think this movie works best for like young girls, I think, which makes sense considering, you know, where this idea came from to begin with.
Right.
It's just a beautiful little story for children, you know? I get a little bit of enjoyment out of it. I like how awful the critic is. It just makes me laugh. And I think Paul Giamatti is giving one of his better performances in this movie. Overall, just think it's really underappreciated. I don't think it's fantastic, but I think a lot more people would love it if they would see it. You know, I feel like it has a real fan base out there, and it's just never found it because everyone was told that it was bad.
Makes sense. My number 11 is one of 4 that I saw for the first time for this. There are
Interesting.
quite a few of these that I had not just ever had a chance to see. There's a couple of these that still don't have Blu-ray releases anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Can I just say, I didn't know that until recently either. So I went shopping for like Blu-ray. I do this every weekend. I got shopping for like Blu-rays and stuff like that.
Nice.
And I remember standing there with my girlfriend going, do you know, it's kind of goofy that I don't own every M. Night Shyamalan movie. For as much as I talk about him, I should. So then I went to go and buy The Village, which is like a big movie. You know, it's not like an unknown movie. This was still like when Shyamalan was in Good Books.
Yep.
You know, it was a bit 50-50 in reception, but still, like, it was a big bit. And I was like, it's got no release. That's insane. So, yeah, that's really odd, especially considering, like, something like The Visit does have a release, but, like, The Village doesn't. Whatever. But, yeah, very bizarre.
So my number 11 was the first time I'd seen this, and again, we're in lockstep here. Lady in the Water is my number 11. I have to be honest here. I felt hatred for this film. I personally don't love fantasy. It's just not my genre. And so, like, 5 minutes after it started and I finally knew what this was about, I knew I wasn't going to love it. However, there was a lot to love, and primarily Paul Giamatti is a gift to humanity, and he is stupendous in this. I do really like the random-ass cobbling of the cast here. I think that they've got some really fun characters. I wish he had a better budget for some of the effects of the creatures.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Absolutely,
To be fair, I don't think it took away from it at all, but to compare something that honestly kind of looks very similar, when you are looking at films that are trying to capture special effects in the dark, like everything that we're seeing of this character, this wolf type thing that we're looking at, and even some things, you know, in the trees and all that, it's all dark on purpose to like muddle. Yeah. They don't have to do all that. But if you look at a movie that I think did this a little bit better, look at Attack the Block that did that with a much better budget and is so much more effective. I really appreciated some of the dialogue in this. I think it was fun, delivered the story that they were trying to. However, the fantasy side just lost all meaning to me, losing any sort of momentum that they had by giving us the most ridiculous names for things. Like, scrunts is not a word that should have been used in a film like this. Like, I get what you're going for, but when you're trying to ground it in like an apartment complex, you're trying to make that feel realistic. There should have been some better choices made there, I think. And I know that's a weird thing to nitpick, but I don't know. This movie did not work for me overall, but I can see if you like fantasy, you probably should like this overall. If you're a fantasy person, this movie is pretty good. Like,
also, I would like to argue that I don't know if I fully believe this, but I do think like it's a perspective that could be held that because some of that stuff is so unrealistic, it's there to completely contrast the absolute normality of Paul Giamatti and his world. You know, these are two beings from the most polar opposite worlds. You know, she comes from a world of scrunts and and beauty and gods and ethereal essence, and Paul Giamatti is from Florida or wherever this movie is based. I don't remember. So, you know, I do think there is that purposeful contrast there, whether it's pulled off all that well. That is a conversation, because I don't think it is, but I do see the concept.
That makes sense. To leave it with a major compliment too, I do want to say this is where Shyamalan shines, because he takes an apartment complex around a pool and drafts an entire film out of basically one expanded location film that should not have been able to work like this. He makes a full fantasy novel basically out of a pool in an apartment building, and that's amazing. That is truly a feat to pull that off.
He does create a world out of this location, which I think was also a way to conserve budget, you know, for those creatures or whatever, even though they don't look that great. I mean, you have to pull in the reins somewhere. So I feel like he worked really hard to make everything out of. I think I say that actually in the video, that he pulls every ounce of potential out of this location, which I think he does.
Nice. All right, sir. You're 11.
My 11 is The Happening. Now, general public perception of this movie
It's so abysmal.
is so dumb.
Yeah.
It is so dumb. It is probably the most misconstrued M. Night Shyamalan movie ever
100%.
made. I don't understand how people don't recognize that this is meant to be funny. It is supposed to be kind of crappy, kind of funny. M. Night Shyamalan himself, who is very much an honest man. Like, if you watch any interview or you read anything or watch any of his speeches, he's very honest about everything. He says, this movie that I did wasn't very good. This is what happened. And still to this day, he says and stands on business that The Happening is meant to be an ode to like B-movie filmmaking. It's supposed to be just kind of choppily. There's a reason why he cast Mark Wahlberg.
Yep.
He didn't cast Mark Wahlberg because he thought he was going to be like an incredible horror protagonist. He knew that Mark Wahlberg has a reputation for being kind of just a silly guy.
Yep.
He's not very much taken seriously as an actor, which I think Mark Wahlberg himself at the time also was aware. I don't think he's aware anymore, but he was at one point. And, he gets Zooey Deschanel in there, who is also very good at that, like, doe-eyed, doesn't really know what's going on, which is very B-movie. And he just throws them together in this ridiculous concept of a movie. I wish I could remember what he's talking about, but there's that moment where Mark Wahlberg is talking about hitting on the woman at the store, and I can't remember what the product is, but he's like a completely superfluous bottle of whatever it is, and it's just so funny the way he says it. And then she's like, "Are you joking?" And he goes, "Yes." Because obviously he's joking. Like, the movie is meant to be funny. There's a scene where, like, he tries talking to one of the plants, and people, like, think that M. Night is being 100% serious. He's being stupid. He's being a little goofball. Like, Mark Wahlberg discovers that the plants are killing everyone, so his first port of call was, let me go and talk to a plant, which, by the way, is not real. It's like a plastic plant in an office. It's not even a real plant. It's dumb. It's funny. It has some good moments. I think it was completely botched in the marketing department. I think, because M. Night had made The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable and Signs, they expected him to make a fully serious thriller movie. And if you watch the trailer does sell that. It sells a very, playing it straight thriller movie, which this movie is not. So I understand the expectations of what it's going to be. And then walking into it, it's not what this movie is not Signs.
Yep.
It's not what what people wanted it to be, and I think more people should see it for what it's trying to be rather than what they would rather it be. But yeah.
I will be talking about this one later because I really enjoy The Happening. My next one, number 10, I am on, is Old. This is another one that I saw for the first time. I really wanted to see this in the theater, and I feel like I may have enjoyed this more in a theater. So I hope I get to see it in a theater eventually. I feel like this one would work very well. I mean, it's a pretty movie. Like, there's a lot of really great
gorgeous
shots
cinematography in this film.
That is probably the biggest thing of praise that I could heap about this. This is one that is just lush. Like, this is one of his best captured films, I think. I just don't know if the story itself works for me. I guess this is an adaptation. I don't know. I've never read what it was from or whatever. And I wanted a little more out of this. And at this point, I feel like this is maybe one of the most stereotypical of the M. Night Shyamalan films in a weird way, because we've gotten this sort of story through so many different methods at this point, through episodes of The Twilight Zone, through random books, through other movies, and it's just, it's experimentation. Like, yeah, okay, that's a weird way to explain this weird thing happening, and I guess I wanted something different out of it. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It's another one that left me just wanting to stare at it, but other than the plot itself, I was not super into.
Man, I can't wait to talk about Old later on.
All right, that means your number 10.
My number 10 is Praying with Anger. We finally got there. So, yeah, this is just a very ridiculously low budget, made for $10 and a shoestring movie that he made like when he was in college or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's set in India. He is the protagonist. M. Night Shyamalan actually plays the protagonist, which I would actually like to quickly say as well. M. Night has a cameo in damn near every movie he's in, pretty much. There's a couple spots where he doesn't, but he's in this movie and he's really good. He's a very talented actor, and I don't think he gets a lot of credit for that. I think because it's the director showing up in his own movie kind of thing that people just kind of dismiss it. But he is quite talented, and he pulls off a lot in this movie. The title Praying with Anger is so poignant, and I think like M. Night's always been very good at titling movies very simply, to put across the entire feeling of a movie in the quickest summation possible. And Praying with Anger is just such a beautiful summation of this movie, because he's an American who goes back to India to discover his roots or whatever, and he finds out that he's completely disconnected from his own culture. He doesn't understand anything that's going on. Everybody that prays, because he doesn't pray. Everybody there prays, and though the world around him is very angry, their souls are so peaceful. They are so hopeful. Whereas he seems very docile, but he holds in more anger than anyone around him. And when he does pray, it is with anger. He only has this kind of relationship with religion and faith when he's experiencing turmoil. He doesn't have this positive relationship with faith. And I think it's just such an interesting thing to tackle as a first-time filmmaker. This feels like a legacy project, like in concept. It feels like something M. Night Shyamalan should do very late in his career, when he's coming to an end. But it isn't. It's his first thing. It's something that he completely believed in. And I think it's pulled off very well. There's no copy of this movie that exists that's like more than, 144p or whatever. But regardless, you can tell someone competent is shooting the movie. It is still a very beautifully shot movie. I would love to see a 1080p version of it. I do think it has like a good potential to be very pretty. And it's also shot very matter of fact. He's not trying to play with anything. He is just shooting an experience of a person. And yeah, I think he captures something very specific and personal and translates it very well. So yeah, it's a great movie.
Interesting. I definitely want to see it now. That feels like one. Yeah, you kind of captured that there. I feel like that was something that almost now, like as a screw you to the low period of his career with all the critic problems, I feel like making this now would have been kind of a big step for him. Interesting.
Just it's on YouTube, I'm pretty sure, like in totality, so you can go and watch it there.
All right. My number 9, this is the third of the 4 that I saw for the first time, and that is The Visit. I like found footage. I'm a fan of a lot of good found footage films, even some that are bad. I just enjoy. I like the realism aspect of it. This movie isn't bad. It's an enjoyable time. This is a fun movie. Really like Catherine Hahn in this, even though she's not in it a whole lot. I feel like she deserves much more credit as an actress, and she sort of bookends this film in a really fun and entertaining way. God, those grandparents, though, very odd, obviously. And the kids, want to point out the same thing that you did earlier, both very good in what they're doing. Both deliver the tension, both, considering they're actually filming some of it, deliver exactly what they need to be. And the story's interesting. It's just, he has an incredible filmography, or this would be higher. Like in many other filmmakers, this would probably be top 5. He just has a lot of wonderful movies. The Visit at number 9, not one that I, got a profound appreciation for, but I want to watch it again. It was fun.
Glad to hear that.
Your number 9
is The Visit. So, that's why I didn't say much, because I was like, I'm going to get to it now. So, you are completely right. Both of the kids in The Visit are phenomenal. Yep. Even like Ed Oxenbould, who plays the young boy, he could be so irritating as a film protagonist. Like, I can easily see how quickly grating that performance could be if it were not handled as well as it is here. Yep. Like, he is so adorably goofy, and he like reminds me of like me and other kids that I knew growing up, that are just so not them. He's not himself. He's trying to be something, but he's the most real he is around his sister. Now, I must say, I come from a very big family. I'm like one of 12.
Nice.
And I'm the youngest, and the one just older than me is my sister Brittany. And we're like, after that, everyone's like at least 5 years older, but me and Brittany are about a year apart, and in this movie, I see me and my sister so much in it. Just the way these kids interact and talk to each other and act around each other. They have this rivalry, but it's all based in love and comfort and protection. They want the best for each other, no matter how harshly they talk. And I just think it's something so beautiful that he captured that could just be lost on anyone that doesn't have siblings. It's either means everything to you because you do have siblings, or it's just passable when you don't. It's not, anything wrong. It's just an added bonus. He's very good there. Like you said, the found footage thing, I think one was very smart because he knew what was on the line, so it was the best way to conserve a budget and keep costs low, whilst being very, very proficient in making it. I watched a whole behind the scenes of this film, and just watching him set up even very basic shots. He's standing there with like the DP, and he's like just staring at a hallway, and he's moving him like inches to the left and right, and he's explaining why just like this small gap is more important than just this slightly bigger gap. And it's so specific, and he knows exactly what he wants to do, and that's what the film reads as. It's someone that knows exactly what he wants to do. He I don't know if you know this, but he made multiple cuts of this film. One that he found was way too scary, and that's not what he wanted. And then there was one cut of the film that was way too funny, and he thought that's not going to work. Probably because he had flashbacks of The Happening, and he was like, I can't make funny movies again. People are going to hate me. So he kind of tried to meet in the middle, which I think he does perfectly. There is there will be one scene where you are laughing outrageously, and then not even a scene later, in that scene, there's a switch, and you feel the most uncomfortable you have ever felt watching a movie, even when nothing happens in the end. He's so good at like tricking you into thinking something's gonna happen. There's the whole scene with like the whole cleaning the oven stuff, and the first time that happens and you're like gripping your seat. Realistically, you should not be worried,
right?
Because at this point in the movie, the grandparents seem like sweet people. Nothing obscene has happened yet. You just think
Slightly
they're old
off.
people that are just a little bit weird, but they're old people. They don't have any interaction with kids.
Yep.
It's expected, whatever. So, but even with all that stored in there, you just have this better instinct, this gut feeling going, something's not right.
Yeah.
Something really is not right, and it's all in this frame. And I just think it speaks to how spectacular he is on a fundamental level as a filmmaker, that he draws out so much out of so little. And he's very patient. That's something I learned with this movie. Everything is very patient in this movie. You know, he plays scenes that I think other filmmakers would think are too long. You know, it makes me think of that whole David Lynch thing when he's recording a scene for Twin Peaks, and the producer tells him that the scene's going on for too long, and he loses his mind.
Yep.
That's how I feel like M. Night Shyamalan is. You know, I don't think he cares what other people are thinking. You know, he knows what this needs. He knows what he wants out of it. And it's so patient. The scene when they're in the foundations of the house, and you know, and they're chasing each other, and then the grandma shows up. Oh, Jesus Christ! Any scene like at nighttime, like when they hid like the camera, say that scene downstairs because they know something's off. Oh God, the reveal scenes. I feel heavy thinking about it. It's such a great movie, spectacular found footage. And yeah, I have a video on it, so go and watch it because it's very important for M. Night.
I totally forgot something that I did want to touch on, and I'm surprised that neither one of us have used the word twist yet, since that's what everybody likes to throw around about M. Night. This movie, the twist definitely worked for me. This is the first, of the newer ones that I didn't feel like it was telegraphed. But I will say, and I'm trying not to spoil all these in this, but
it's really hard, isn't it?
If you don't want the visit spoiled, fast forward like 30 seconds, because I think this is one thing that has to be touched on. I think that to set up the tension between the mother and the parents the way that he did, which was very well, like something obviously happened in their past and they have this bad relationship, but then for her to not watch the handoff of children to parents to verify that they get there safely. As a parent myself, that is one of the dumbest things in a movie I've seen in a long time. Like, no offense, because I love what you did. I love the movie. To not verify that your kids are with the right people, just there's nothing that works about that. No one ever would have let that happen, especially if you have a negative relationship in the past with those people.
Yeah, that is... Obviously, I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak to the feeling of that, but it does feel quite odd and a bizarre choice, but I think the twist still works. Because by the time the twist comes around, you kind of forget about that, you know. And that moment when they're on that call with the mother, and she does, you know, she says what she says. I don't want to spoil it. So she says what she says, and that realization sinks in. That absolutely stomach emptying moment is so raw, like, because there's other times where like a twist in a movie feels impactful on such a huge scale, you know, it means so much to so many people, but in this movie it is just so specific to two children, the most innocent people you've ever seen in a movie, you know, just harmless, beautiful creatures, and their entire existence, their entire just livelihood is put completely into question, and you feel nothing but terror for them. It's nothing to do with you as a viewer. It is completely about the characters, and even just imagining like what the mother is going through at that moment adds like a whole other layer to that, you know, like that's how that makes me feel. So I can't imagine like you being a parent or any parent seeing that and seeing that realization. It must be the worst feeling. Oh God, no, I don't like it.
Yeah, it just definitely made me question the choice there in the plot. But either way, it's still a great film, and I hope more people watch it, because I know it's one that gets... This is one that definitely was a victim of his previous couple films, and people just were out by this point.
Oh, I would also like to quickly add that Olivia de Jong and Ed Oxenbould, the two kids, they also were in a movie together the next year called Better Watch Out, which is like a Christmas horror film.
Great movie. Friend of my channel, his close friend who's been on the channel, wrote the film. Better Watch Out is great.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, they're both in that movie literally just a year later, which I thought
didn't realize it was the two kids. Nice. Not too much farther along than yours. My number 8 is The Happening. And again, I enjoyed this movie a whole hell of a lot more than Society. In other filmmakers' lists, this would have been higher likely, but it's M. Night Shyamalan, and he's got a lot of amazing movies.
Yes.
I do want to say this movie is so good, and so few people at the time that appreciated it made me feel freaking insane. And I don't understand how we have, we mentioned this before we got into the M. Night Shyamalan topic. I feel like most people have never seen The Happening. They've seen a couple clips and have judged the film based on what they've seen. Yeah. The Wahlberg communication to other characters in this movie is so weird that it has to be on purpose. It's very clearly somebody trying to make a send-up of his favorite films from the late 50s, and it works as that. And yeah, the end of the movie, the idea of the twist being this last, revelation in the last 45 seconds, it's weird. It's the same sort of thing like in the 50s, the films that were out there, they have weird explanations for things that you can't look into because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Sure, that's what he was making here. And I know it's cliche, but like, the movie is good because of the friends we made along the way. The journey is the point of this film. The awkward interactions, the freaking hilarious way that you have this old lady in this house interacting with Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel. The random, the deaths that you see people doing near the beginning of this movie. Everything is just like, what am I watching? And that is fun. There is no reason to not get lost in this movie. I like The Happening so much more than most people.
Yeah, me too. I really enjoy The Happening. I'm trying to get my girlfriend to watch it because I think she'll really like it too. It is just such a fun movie. If you go into it without, seriously, anyone watching, if you have never seen a video on this movie, if you have never read anything about this movie, you don't know really anything about, just go and watch it. Just watch it with nothing in your mind and give it like a very fair shot, because I think so. Same thing with Lady in the Water. I just think so many more people would love this movie if they gave it a chance.
Fully. And to be fair, I think one of the major failures here was the marketing. They marketed this like a full-on horror movie. And to be fully fair here, they could have made a great horror movie out of this premise. It could be made into a terrifying film. This is not meant to be a horror movie, period.
No. The thing is, you are right, with the whole the 50s thing, but if M. Night Shyamalan had made The Blob in 2008, people would have hated it. Yep. Okay? They would have hated it. If M. Night Shyamalan made The Fly in 2008, it'd be labeled one of the worst movies ever made, because that's just how they wanted to perceive it at that time. Yep. And I think it's time we look. I genuinely might do a video on The Happening one day. I think I'm going to get to a point where I will have a video on every single M. Night Shyamalan movie except for After Earth. I've just got nothing to say about After Earth.
That would be the best part. Make a video on After Earth, but it's like 2 sentences and only 20 seconds.
It's an April Fool's video.
All right, sir. That leads to your number 8.
My number 8 is Old. So, Old is a movie that when it came out, I did not know how to feel about it. It's like a movie that at the time, I knew was trying a lot of things, and I just couldn't figure out whether that meant anything to me. Whether I felt like those things worked or didn't work. And I watched it one more time after that, and I was like, this works for me completely. I do think it's a movie that like gets better on every rewatch. Absolutely, you notice the effort that's going in on every single rewatch. Just the beauty of it. There's this one shot of the rib cage, and it's one of my favorite M. Night Shyamalan shots ever. It's just of the rib cage, and it's inside, and you can see all the characters in between each rib, except in the last one, in the last couple of ribs, it's just the rocks of the wall, which is a character in itself, you know? And I think it's so beautiful that gets its whole slot by itself. It has very good, like, scares, like genuinely good scares. Like the first time you see that body that's in the water, beautiful, very good timing. And in the cave with the light, with the woman that's breaking her bones, genuinely thrilling filmmaking, absolutely stellar. The concept is very weird. Like it's a weird movie, and the way he handles it is very weird. I will say I have read the source material. The film is better. It handles it fantastically. I think this is one of those things that works better in this condensed format. I think the speed of the movie helps the concept of it, you know? And during the one moment where the two kids have grown up and they're next to this campfire on the beach, and they're just talking about their entire life, which has just been the past day. It's so gorgeous. And there's a line where they say, "Why did we ever want to leave this place?" And I don't know, there's something about it, just it's gorgeous. And I think he's trying a lot to say how infantilized we are. You know, how we grow up, but we never really grow up. You know, you think when you're a kid that adults have it figured out and adults know the world and they understand everything, and then you become an adult and you don't download all this knowledge. You're there and you're like, okay, I'm older, but I still don't know anything. You know, I'm scared. I have to phone the doctors myself now. How do you do that? You know, and I think he does a very good job of demonstrating how insignificant we still feel as we get old. You know, age has no correlation to anything but experience. So yeah, I think he handles it very well. It's a very beautiful movie.
Visual feast, the entire thing. There are shots in this that are, even after, gosh, by this point, almost 26 years or whatever of filmmaking, that are like, whoa, he could do that. It's an impressive visual film.
Old is one of those movies where he took his greatest step in experimentation visually.
Yeah. Well, speaking of visual experimentation, my number 7 is the first mention between us of the trilogy, and I'm going to go with Glass. I like Glass a lot. I know that critics and a lot of people that loved Unbreakable and Split didn't love it, but this movie, I don't know, maybe I kept my expectations fairly well in check, but at this point, like, Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson are old. I knew that it wasn't going to be like the X-Men power up that people wanted it to be, and even then he kind of got some of that. Like, we got some of what we probably, knowing what we know about Bruce Willis now, probably shouldn't have gotten at that time. I think the addition of Sarah Paulson was interesting. I know a lot of people don't like her all that much in this, especially because of the third act and the way that a lot of that was handled.
They're insane.
Yeah, I think that he told a very, like, well-rounded, well-thought-out story here. And at this point, like, you probably know a lot more about the behind the scenes. I'm not sure if he planned on all of this from the beginning or whatever. It feels like he did. It feels like he knew what he was doing from Jump Street. And I don't know, it feels like a gift that we got these 3 films. Unbreakable could have been a great standalone film, sure. But I'm so glad that we got the other two alongside it. The colors in this movie are some of the most vibrant in any of his films overall, period. Anya Taylor-Joy, also great in this. But everybody, literally everybody in this movie is great. And the fact that he got like minor characters to come back from Unbreakable is wild. I appreciate so much about this. It is, I don't know. I feel like I'm proud on his behalf that this feels like a personal achievement that he was setting out to do. And I'm so glad that we have it.
I mean, as far as I know, there was no planning of this trilogy. I do know that when Unbreakable came out, there were rumors that there was going to be like a second Unbreakable movie, and M. Night Shyamalan has confirmed many times that he never planned on making a sequel to that movie. There was a time in the late 2000s when he was discussing it with Samuel L. Jackson, but at the time, The Happening had just come out and stuff like that. He was getting trashed. He couldn't get much money for projects or whatever, so he knew he couldn't make the movie he wanted to, so they put it on the back burner. But every now and then, apparently, he would hit up Samuel L. Jackson just to make sure that if it is ever time to go, are you ready? And I think, like every couple of years, he would still call him and just say, if I decide to make this movie, are you in? Because I can't ever start putting my hopes up on making one of these movies if you're not going to be in it.
I'm so glad he said yes.
Yeah. I have a lot to say about Glass later.
Good. Number 7 for you then.
Number 7 for me is The Village, which some would say is the beginning of the end for M. Night Shyamalan, because he had a very good reputation for The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and then Signs. The Village is his 4th movie, as most people would see it, and it was the first time that people doubted whether he had it or not. And I think a lot of that is due to the twist. The twist does not work for a lot of people. It works for me.
Same.
Because it does have a couple holes. I wouldn't even say holes. I would just say some oddities to it. So I don't want to spoil it, but just like the way the characters act and interact retroactively puts a lot of stuff in question, considering the twist. But I still think it works indefinitely. It is probably, along with old M. Night Shyamalan's most beautiful movie. It is a very, very gorgeously shot film. Very autumn, fall. It's just gorgeous browns, gorgeous Bryce Dallas Howard. gorgeous movie, and she is phenomenal in this film. Joaquin Phoenix is absolutely incredible in this movie. Adrian Brody, absolutely phenomenal in this movie. Brendan Gleeson, I think, gives a very, very underrated performance in this movie. Overall, it's very good. I like M. Night tapping into like folklore, which is something he had never done and still kind of has never done. The closest he got is with Lady in the Water, which is less folklore, more fantasy, That line is blurred, but there is a line. And I just think the way he handles everything in this movie, it is so different. Again, it's just so different to everything he's done. And it still works. Also, I think this is maybe my favorite Shyamalan cameo, barring one appearance.
Yeah.
I love his cameo in this movie because you don't really see him. It is mostly just a voiced role. You just see his face and a lot of reflections, and I think he directs that very well. There's like this one shot where they're in the office and he opens like a fridge door or whatever, there's glass, and it like pans to his face, and then every now and then you'll see something like that, and then you're like, I understand why people were calling him the next Spielberg. Just the way that he conceptualizes a shot is so gorgeous. Like, every time I see that, it's so nonchalant for him. He just does it and we move on. But for me, like, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I can't imagine thinking of doing that, of understanding film to such a degree that that's the way you're going to communicate this. It would never occur to me to do that. and I think that's something that makes him special. It's a very well acted movie, and I think it's fantastic. I can't believe people don't like it.
I get to talk about it now because this one is my number 6. Yeah, the twist works for me. I agree with literally everything you said. I think this movie is fantastic. Adrian Brody and Brendan Gleeson, by far my 2 favorite parts of this movie. Not that Bryce Dallas Howard and Joaquin Phoenix aren't amazing. They are, but I expected that. Adrian Brody at this time, I would not have expected this performance.
Sure.
Brendan Gleeson already showing what he was going to be doing over the next 15 years because he is always amazing. Yeah, there's some plot holes with the twist, sure, but the movie works. Like, if you just sit down and watch this movie start to finish, you get the like, oh shit moment that he wanted to do. It is completely successful. Yeah, not much else to say. Great colors. Really, really want to highlight the yellow raincoat because, man, when he wears that is a stark difference to the background. And Shyamalan has always done great with juxtaposing certain colors to draw your eye somewhere. And man, did he frame that beautifully. I forgot to mention, this is the last of the ones that I watched for the first time. Worked beautifully. Nothing was spoiled for me. It didn't. There's a couple of moments that I kind of thought that the twist was going to be what it was, but there was nothing super telegraphed. It was just well made. The story was great, and I'm a sucker for folk horror, so maybe that's why it worked for me. I don't know why I like that much more than fantasy, but I do. But the movie itself is it's a winner. I don't understand why it had the negative reception. Makes no sense.
No, I don't. I think it is solely on that twist. I think it just didn't work for a lot of people, and he had this reputation of the twists anyway, so I feel like people judge a movie in its entirety based on the twist, which I think is completely unfair. Because it undoes everything that he was doing before. Also, speaking of folklore horror, have you seen his daughter's movie that came out this year?
Not yet. It's on my list for hopefully soon, yeah. Yeah,
Ishana Night Shyamalan, her debut. It dips into folklore horror. And again, it's not been well received.
Not at all.
It's been pretty sharp. But me personally, I really liked it. It worked very well for me. And I think it's so odd that like the way I feel about her movie is the way I feel about a lot of M. Night's films, where I feel like it has just been unfairly criticized. It's not perfect at all. At all. Like, it does have a lot of issues.
Right.
But I just think it has a lot going for it. Like, it has a soul. And I think that's a thing many people forget to counter in.
Yeah. All right, then. Your number 6.
My number 6 is the first mention of this trilogy for me, Split. Now, Split used to be in the top 5 for me. I really, really like Split. I think Split was the first time I watched a film with James McAvoy and started to realize that this guy might be one of the best of his generation. Yep. He really is. And I think if he were in more movies, because he's not, he's not as prolific as I would expect him to be, considering, like, it's not like he couldn't get work. He was Professor X in X-Men. Like, he's a high-profile person, and every time he's in a movie, even if the movie's not very great, people say, but James McAvoy, he was pretty good, And he's a phenomenal actor. And I think if he was in more stuff, he would be more highly regarded. But in this film, he just absolutely carries it. And I think that's intentional, because M. Night is doing, a little bit with the feeling and the framing and the stuff like that, but I think he knows that this film weighs on this character. If this character does not work, the movie does not work. It falls apart completely. This needs to work. And I think James McAvoy handles that with such ease that the general person doesn't even understand that that's not how, like, if just anyone was even slightly worse, the whole movie kind of gets rubbed off as terrible.
Right.
That's how close it is. It's one performance away from being a terrible movie. And he cracks the code. Every single character that he plays in this movie, because if people don't know, he plays a character with a split personality. I've completely forgot the word, but that. And, he every character that he has, he completely embodies as their own character. They are not a subsidiary of one guy. They are their own person. And I remember there's a lot of criticism towards this movie because how it portrays people with this condition. But I just feel like it's unnecessary pushback.
Oh, yeah.
It was in the same vein where like Buffalo Bill gets a lot of pushback for portraying trans people like in a very bad light. But I think part of inclusion is including a variety, right? Yep. You can't only ever be a good guy or a bad guy or whatever, because then it's just pandering. It's not real characters. And I think James McAvoy plays real characters. It's cartoonish, of course it is, because it's a comic book movie, but he just brings an astounding amount of realism to it, and everyone else does too, by the way, because like Anya Taylor-Joy is in this movie, and she's absolutely great. This is like when she was first starting out, no one really knew who she was. Absolutely brings it. She brings it so well that she stands next to James McAvoy, given the performance of his lifetime, and you still notice that she's there, which is more than enough. It's just great. It's great storytelling. And the reveal that he has a split personality, I think, is really well done. That's not the twist, for anyone wondering, but because you just hear the conversation happening behind this locked door.
Yeah.
And then, you're like, oh, who's out there? Like, and then they open the door and it's revealed that it's him again, just as Patricia this time, and he's just he's physically a different human being, that he looks different. You recognize him as a different person somehow. It's just a phenomenal movie. And to be fair, the twist isn't that crazy, because generally the twist is that it's part of the Unbreakable trilogy. That's kind of what the twist is. It works so much. And I remember I watched this before watching Unbreakable.
Wow.
Because obviously I didn't know it was part of a trilogy. No one did when it first came out. They wasn't marketing that. I just went and saw this movie, and then at the end, obviously David Dunn's at the bar or whatever, and I remember everyone going, "Whoa!" and I was there like, "What? What's going on?" Is the twist that Bruce Willis is in the movie? I don't know what's going on. 4 seconds.
Oh wow,
yeah, it's great.
Interesting. Movie. That's crazy. Okay, I'll talk about Split in a few minutes. My number 5 is an interesting one because it is technically his most recent film, Knock at the Cabin. This one, I don't know. There's something about this. Again, I mentioned that we would talk about another adaptation later. This one feels like one that works to me. The Last Airbender and this one are both ones that I did not consume the primary source before going into it. And I don't have the vitriol and hate of everybody that read the novel and held it dear to their hearts. So I really liked this. I was fond of the story. I thought that it felt, it felt like M. Night Shyamalan, kind of like I mentioned earlier. It's one of those, this is a very high stakes film in a very low stakes situation. It's a contained, the world is about to end story, but you're just seeing a sliver of it. And I feel like he is always successful in that moment. Now, it does help when you are getting potentially like 2 of the best performances out of Dave Bautista and Jonathan Groff that you possibly could. And they are both amazing in this movie. Bautista showing why he is probably the best WWE actor ever. Jonathan Groff being, other than what he did in Mindhunter, I think the most compelling part of this film, and part of his career, other than Hamilton too as well. I'm blown away that so many people hated this movie. I was completely drawn in from the first moment. Love the story. I thought it was a massive, massive return to like peak Shyamalan for me.
I can't wait to talk about Knock at the Cabin.
Great.
I'm ecstatic to talk about Knock at the Cabin.
All right. Your next pick.
But I can't yet because my number 5 is Glass.
Nice.
I adore Glass. Glass was a movie that, again, in the similar vein of Old, when it first came out, I watched it. At this point, I had watched Unbreakable. So I watched Unbreakable, and then I rewatched Split, and then I watched Glass. And I didn't know really what to make of it. You know, my expectations, they weren't the same as everyone else's, sure,
right,
but I still was expecting a different movie than what I got. So I was still trying to process the whole time what I have. And after rewatching it a great many times, I have landed on it being a top 5 Shyamalan. It is absolutely stellar. Everyone is giving 1,000%. Sam Jackson acts in this movie like he hasn't been acting in Marvel movies for the past 10 years. He acts like a real actor. You know, he's straight back to 2000 with Mr. Glass. Like, he's there. Like, he never left. He's so good with it. David Dunn, Bruce Willis, obviously, with his condition and all of that. It is stellar that he managed to pull this one from his soul. And James McAvoy, whatever James McAvoy was taking during the filming of this movie, every actor needs to take. I can't imagine someone else doing this. Just there's one because I in a video, I don't remember what video, I talk about this movie and I show a clip, and it's one of my favorite clips from any M. Night Shyamalan movie where James McAvoy is trying to get out of the room and he gets hit with the flash, and then he flicks between like something stupid like 7 different personalities in such a short amount of time, and it's so funny. It is such a good performance, the way he's flicking through every single one of them, and then he flicks into like this frat bro, and I love it. So like the line delivery where he's like, "I almost got you, bro." It's so funny. He's like, "I see what you're doing with all these lights. That's some buttery shit." And every time he says it, it's so funny. It makes me crease so much. And just the reintroduction of Anya Taylor-Joy's character, and the growth that she has and the empathy that she has for him that nobody else has. You know, she's the only one that really feels for him when she lives in a world where she should hate him the most. You know, it's beautiful. It has a great ending. I think a lot of the vitriol came from how David Dunn's character rounds out. I think a lot of people really hated that, but I think it works. A lot of what he was trying to do with this movie and Unbreakable and Split is how superheroes would be in the real world. You know, it's not The Boys, because that's what The Boys pretends to be. You know, this is like if superheroes were real. But it's like, no, this is what superheroes are like if they're real. You know? And them fighting in like a parking lot is what it would be like. You know, there wouldn't be these grand stages.
Exactly.
You know, that like there is in Infinity War and Endgame. Superheroes would just be fighting in parking lots. Because where else are you going to fight? You know,
on top of skyscrapers, of course.
And I think he plays with the conventions of comic book movies so well. I think this came out at the perfect time as well, like after all of the MCU has happened, and he has more to play with when it comes to the conventions. And I love Sarah Paulson's inclusion. I think she is absolutely fantastic in this movie. Anyone that is telling you that she's bad is lying to you. The whole concept of the movie playing with, okay, so we've spent 2 movies telling you that superheroes are real. Now, at the last installment, I'm going to ask you, are they?
Right.
And the whole movie, you're like, yeah, of course they are. You've told me that they are. And then like you get halfway through to the last and you're like, I don't know if they are. Wait, are they not? Are superheroes just not real? And I think they do such a good job at like convincing you that what you've seen for the past 2 and 3 movies is not what you think you saw. Is quite incredible, because it starts making you think like, oh yeah, there are people that can do that actually. That's not that impressive. You know, you're seeing superhuman feats and just going, no, I think my dad could do that. You know, it's so good, and yeah, it's visually very striking, very beautiful movie. Plays with colors, super well. It's a top tier Shyamalan movie.
I agree. Number 4. I think this is one that many people would have probably at their top, and I'm going to go all the way back to The Sixth Sense here. This, speaking of striking colors, obviously we know now that this is where he started all of that, dealing with colors in a way that is telegraphing a story in itself when you go back and rewatch it and get much more enjoyment out of, wow, he really was telling us through the entire film. Figuring out that he is somebody that loves twists and revealing twists, and just the imagery in this that stuck with me for years. The young boy walking down the hallway with half his head blown off, the vomiting in the tent, the immediate reaction of almost feeling cold yourself when you see someone else exhale and you can see their breath. That all stems from this film for me. It is one of those that first really made me feel genuine fright while watching a film, and he just wrote it brilliantly. Love this movie, love almost everything about it, but one thing that I really want to say is this is the first film ever that made me fall in love with Toni Collette. I think that she is, in my opinion, one of our greatest living actors, and this is the first thing I saw from her, and the first thing that made me say, wow, this is a person that can harness emotion in a way that most people can't in their real life. And she is freaking sitting in a car, and some guy is telling her how to move her face, and she can do it that good. How am I on this earth? Like, she can control everything. She's amazing. I fell in love with her as an actor in that moment, and I've never let go. I appreciate this movie so much just for delivering her to my brain.
Speaking of Toni Collette, have you ever seen the movie Muriel's Wedding?
Yep.
Yeah, that's in my top 100. I adore that movie so much, and she is so fantastic in it. Anyone that's seen that movie, not seen that movie, should go and see it. Also, really random about that film, actually. Hollywood Reporter do that series where it's like the round table, where they get all the actors, and there's one where they did directors, and Ridley Scott was on it, and they asked the question, if you could preserve one movie for all of time, what would it be? And Ridley Scott says Muriel's Wedding, and everyone laughs it off, but he's like so serious about it, and then he explains why he loves the movie, and I'm like, Ridley Scott, that's my goat. Like, he's correct. So it was a great movie. My number 4, we have Knock at the Cabin. I do have a video on Knock at the Cabin about like all the secret themes and messages and everything that he puts into there, because there is so much symbolism in this movie that I think went over so many people's heads, and not to say that I know better, I just feel like I pay more attention. Like I'm really looking for that stuff. It's one of the reasons I watch movies, is to find stuff like that. And I think M. Night Shyamalan is just so fantastic in this. And I have read The Cabin at the End of the World, and this movie is better. It is. There's not many times where the adaptation is better than the source material, but this is one of those times, I think. He does change the ending, which I think is where a lot of people hate the film. Right. I think that's where a lot of that response comes from. But I think he changed the ending for the better. Because the book has the exact same story, basically, the entire way through. It's very, the movie's very faithful for basically all of it. But then in the book, the ending feels like it just takes so much out of the journey. It feels very mean-spirited towards the end. And a lot of the oomph gets taken out, a lot of passion, a lot of the emotions, they just suddenly feel very empty, which is definitely an artistic choice, and I understand why they went with that choice. But I think what M. Night goes for at the end of Knock at the Cabin makes the emotions greater, it makes the experience more powerful, and it makes a rewatch of the film far greater than if he had went with the original ending. beautiful, beautiful shots in this film. I love how he shoots the first conversation with Dave Bautista's character and the young girl. That first conversation, just the way it's shot is absolutely, gorgeous and brilliant. It does like a great job of convincing you that he's not a bad person, which if you just look at the situation objectively, just look at the facts of the situation, it is scary, especially if you're a parent, because what you're seeing is a child in the middle of nowhere in a forest collecting grasshoppers by herself, and then suddenly this enormous man,
huge,
one of the biggest men you've ever seen, walks out of the middle of the woods. And he just starts talking to this girl, which is a very, very terrifying situation. And yet somehow when you're watching it, you feel so at peace. You feel like he genuinely means well. It doesn't feel like a serial killer trying to it's not Pennywise in the sewer, talking to Georgie. It feels honest. And the entire movie feels like that. It is so powerful. I think it is probably his most powerful movie, barring my number one spot. Even though I have movies above this, I just think the emotional presence in this film cannot be understated. And the performances, like you say, are great across the board. There is not a weak link in the chain. From the very little girl who I wish I knew the name of, she is absolutely stellar in the film. Rupert Grint, randomly coming out of retirement to do an M. Night Shyamalan film. Okay, sure, why not? He's absolutely great in it. His final moments are absolutely great. The emotion that he pulls into that moment is so serious. And I think it's so great at doing the back and forth with you, whether, what's going on is real or not. And how that's represented in the characters. One's very based on their worldview, he's very stuck in one way, and the other one's more open to maybe it's this. And I think it's just absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best filmmaking he's ever demonstrated, and I do think it's one of the best of the decade.
One thing, a word I forgot to mention, I guess I should say, about this is a movie that you don't expect to feel this, but there is a lot of empathy in this film. There's so much like preparing for grief. There is so much caring about how other people are perceiving them or reading them as individuals. And something about the way that he gets that across feels much more nuanced than I think other filmmakers most likely would have approached that.
Yeah, I mean, my video on this is one of my favorite videos that I've made. Now that I'm thinking about it, it is important to me. And I remember when this film came out, I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score, which is completely superfluous, by the way, to anyone. It means nothing. But I looked at it and I saw that it had like a 60% or something. Like, it was very mixed. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, we're so back. Right. This movie's going to be great. An M. Night Shyamalan movie that comes out that nobody's sure whether it's good or not, it's going to be phenomenal. And I watched it and it just was. It was absolutely great. And yeah, you are right. It is a very empathetic movie. I remember one of the main criticisms of the film was that some people felt it was homophobic, and I thought that was just a horrific misreading of the film. I don't think I've seen many films in this vein anyway be so empathetic to that life. And yeah, it's such an empathetic movie to everyone involved. To like, it suddenly makes everyone in the situation feel like a victim, which is such an interesting thing about a film that's demonstrating like power dynamics. Everyone feels like a victim, which I think is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah, the whole homophobia thing, it's treated so nonchalantly. It's barely even a blip in the plot point. It makes no sense. All right, then. We're in top 3 territory, so obviously these are important for both of us. Clearly, we both love this filmmaker, and we are at a point where these are probably masterpieces for both of us. Number 3 for me is Unbreakable. I can't remember if I've seen this more than Signs or just right around the same amount of Signs. I've seen Unbreakable so many times that I feel like every time it's an exercise to find something else that I appreciate just a little bit more. And there's something about this movie that allows me to do that. In every single viewing, I notice something small. And every single viewing, I walk away with it growing in esteem for me, which is wild, because the first time I watched it, it was, I've never seen anything like this, and I want all movies to be like this. I appreciate so much about how human the story feels when it's meant to be about somebody who's literally being treated as a superhero.
Yeah.
Everything about it is personal and attentive and emotional and done in a way that movies that are meant to be treating this otherworldly human could not possibly fathom, speaking about a personal depth of emotion that this movie even grasps in the first 20 minutes. It is so dense in the way that it is approaching every aspect of these relationships, and the sheer melancholy of being somebody like Glass or like Dave Dunn. Like, there's so much in this that is, I don't know, it's hard to talk about because there's so much to this. This movie is beautiful and drab at the same time. It is heartbreaking and exciting at the same time. It is like an illogical fallacy, and yet when you get done, you feel like it makes perfect sense on every single level. And I don't know, it's one of those that makes me question how anybody can feel like they can make a movie after something like this, because it feels so fantastic.
So, my number 3, and you are right, by the way, these are all from Knock at the Cabin, so my top 4, I think, are all perfect movies. I give them all 10s.
Wow.
So, number 3 is The Sixth Sense. So, obviously, I think we've both been a little bit controversial, because I think, in general, most people consider this his best movie.
Yeah.
And I get why. I do think he has done a little bit of sense, but it is really good. Like, it's one of those movies that you get told how good it is so much, and then you see it, and it is just still that good. Like, a lot of the times when people tell you how good a movie is, you know, and they keep rabbiting that point, and then you finally watch it and you're like, okay, it was good, but like, you overblew it a little bit. But The Sixth Sense is better than you're told it is. It is just phenomenal. And you are right, Toni Collette in this movie is one of the most heartbreaking characters M. Night has ever written. I think that's something we haven't touched on really as well yet, is M. Night Shyamalan as a writer, you know?
Yeah.
Because he's one of those people that his films are a complete vision, you know, from script level to directing to editing to like, it is, you know, him completely. He is a true auteur, and his writing in The Sixth Sense, which is actually quite funny because he wrote this movie the same year he wrote Stupid Little, which I just thought is like a funny, weird little thing that he did. It is just so empathetic and emotionally driven. That final scene with Toni Collette in the car, you know, it's heartbreaking, makes me cry every time I see it. She just pulls so much out of it, and the twist is very famous of the film. You know, it's obviously very famous, but it's one of those rare circumstances where the twist makes rewatches of the movie better. You know, there's most of the time when a twist happens in a film, it will take the oomph out of your next watches, you know, because you know what's going on.
Yep.
Whereas in this, the twist makes what you've seen much more layered, and it makes rewatches so much more deep because you're looking for things. And M. Night Shyamalan managed to shoot this movie completely different ways. There is 2 ways to view this movie, you know? So every shot has 2 intentions.
Yep.
And it is so masterful that he managed, like, he cracks the code in that. I think the best example of that is without spoiling obviously, is the one scene where he's sitting with Toni Collette's character and Haley Joel Osment comes through the door, and then she goes off to, you know, make the tea or whatever. Just the implication of that scene when you're first watching it to when you're watching it secondly is just so wild, you know. And it's funny, like, seeing it on the second time, because he is beating you over the head with it. It is honestly so obvious in retrospect. He's not subtle about it at all, but you just don't see it coming. He is so good at handling this story and this narrative. And again, the character arcs that they go through. Haley Joel Osment, as we said, you know, because he's very good with child actors, is probably the best example of a child actor in one of his movies.
Oh yeah.
Oscar nominee Haley Joel Osment, just
deservedly
absolutely
so.
fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I think in a movie with Bruce Willis and Toni Collette, the fact that Haley Joel Osment still stands out. You know, that in the scene where he infamously says, you know, the famous line or whatever to Bruce Willis, his whole performance in that scene is something of a seasoned veteran, and he's not. It's astounding. It's a great movie.
I love everything you said about it. Yeah, this movie's it's a perfect movie, literally. We're already on number two. Number two, it was a little lower on your list, but I kind of adore Split.
Mm-hmm.
So Split is here primarily because I was a psych major in college. I appreciate the mind. I appreciate the study behind dissociative identity disorder.
There it is, DID.
I appreciate the nuance that they approach this, which I don't understand any pushback on the way that they handled portraying any of this, because there was, again, he is such an empathetic filmmaker in everything. I've never felt like a negative aspect of him going into any of these characters in any of the films, except for the critic and Lady in the Water. Well, yeah, it's met with vitriol. Split is one of those movies that I don't know, like you connect with one actor and multiple characters in a way that you didn't really think was possible, and you're feeling the empathy because of how it's filmed, of like, well, shit, he is going through so much as an individual, and not just to portray all of this, but to live that life. And then the last 15 minutes happens, and it gripped me. Like some of the scenes of, you know, McAvoy crawling up the wall, I remember sitting up in the theater and going like, oh shit, we are in for it. This is amazing. And I did not expect any of that to be happening like that. I don't know. It was just, this is like one of the most captivating of his films, I feel like. I get lost in certain scenes of this and truly appreciate the way that McAvoy just lives in this. He is an otherworldly actor. This ability should not be possible. And he is everything that you would hope for somebody that is trying to portray such an interesting identity disorder. Like that's such an unfathomable thing for anybody that's not experiencing it, and yet he does it flawlessly. And then, of course, we get the last 30 seconds. And seeing this opening weekend when nobody knew about this, and hearing an entire theater go, oh, what the fuck, was like one of the best moments in cinematic history for me, seeing this in a theater, because it is that mind-blowing of twist, I guess, is the best way to say. I hate to use the word twist here, but it is. To hear that it's in the same universe alone was enough, and then to find out later we're getting more was such a crazy way to deliver on that promise, that it is... Again, it's like a miracle that he was able to pull this off this way. Just the secret of doing that in modern film is nigh impossible to deliver. I think that's the benefit of him, you know, handling these projects almost solely, you know? If this was a big studio movie, that would have been revealed in the final trailer, like 10 days before the film came out, you know? And people would have expected Bruce to be in it for like 30 minutes, even though he was barely in it. And then they would have hated the movie afterwards. Yep. And instead, I truly think this is a masterpiece. Like this is everything I hope for in a movie that M. Night directs. This is amazing. I absolutely understand. Like, even though I have it at 6, it's still like a 9 out of 10 to me. Like it's an absolutely incredible movie. And I think also
we say, like, you know, McAvoy transforms into all of these characters, but he does it so well you remember them. You know, it's so difficult. Like, but somehow, like, I know Patricia. You know Kevin. Like, he manages to make you remember all of these characters that technically have the same face, but you just remember them all as complete individuals.
Well, and it's almost worse because it's the same face, the same wardrobe. There's no other cues other than McAvoy's personality that changes it, which should never work in a film, and it totally does.
Yeah, he's transformed. He's absolutely incredible.
All right, number 2.
So my number 2 used to be my number 1 forever. This was always my number 1 until recently, which is Unbreakable.
Wow.
Yeah. I had Unbreakable at number 1 for basically ever since I saw it. It is such an individual movie in the huge landscape of comic book movies. You know, he was making commentary on comic book characters in the year 2000. Spider-Man hadn't even come out yet.
Right.
It's the same year X-Men came out. Like, he was so ahead of the curve, you know, on deconstructing the superhero genre before it was even really a thing. You know, the most popular superhero movies that came out before that was like Superman in 78 and Batman in 89 and Blade in 98. Like, that was basically all you had. And he still manages to just decode the whole genre and all of the concepts so very well. And Mr. Glass, Sam Jackson, in this movie, might be my favorite Sam Jackson performance. You know, he just has such an understanding of his world. Yeah. You know, and I'd specifically love the one scene where he's showing that customer the artwork of the two, of the hero and the villain, and he's explaining the physiognomy of drawing a villain and a hero, about how the cheekbones are different and how the eyebrows have to be drawn differently, so just when you're looking at something you understand it. You know, you don't have to know these characters to understand their part in their story. And I think M. Night inserts that because he himself has that understanding. In every film, he has that, but he also plays with that, and he plays with that in this movie. You know, Mr. Glass, he's frail, he's in a wheelchair, you know, but he's kind of the villain. And David Dunn, you know, he's a pretty big guy, you know, at this point. He's, you know, his superpower is super strength, you know. He's the more intimidating of the two, but he's the hero. And I love his use of colors with the purple and the greens. I love how miserable the cinematography is. You know, it's always raining. It's very blue, very melancholic. I love the M. Night cameo in this movie. Oh, I forgot to mention it as well. I love the M. Night cameo in The Sixth Sense, by the way, when he's like at the jury, whatever. It's great. But I love his cameo in Unbreakable. It's so good. He's just there for like one random second. I love how individual David Dunn's powers are. You know, they are kind of realistic. You know, they're not insane Marvel powers. They are high intuition. You know, high intuition, slightly stronger than the average human. It's not like completely unbelievable, which I think is why Glass works so well, but yeah, just the way he plays with conventions, the cinematography, the layers that this goes through. His kid, when he's got the gun at the dinner table, I don't think I've ever felt more tense in a movie before. It's just perfect movie.
Samuel L. Jackson is such a dick in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, and the twist. I'm not going to say what the twist is, but this, I think, is the best M. Night Shyamalan twist. I don't think there is a single one that is as unpredictable as this one. I don't think anyone has ever guessed this twist, ever. It's just not possible. It completely reshapes the movie. It's the same as The Sixth Sense, and it changes the way it feels on a rewatch. So yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, Unbreakable's amazing. But that leaves us to number one, and I'm kind of surprised that we both have the same number one.
Yeah.
All that's left is The Signs Before Us. Signs is essentially an alien invasion film that is told through stories of grief and through religious, coping with religious trauma and how that changes the way that you are framing your life, and delivered by some of the best performances in his filmography. Again, with Joaquin Phoenix, and Mel Gibson is amazing. M. Night Shyamalan playing a pretty important part in this movie even, and does very, very well. This movie is terrifying and sad and bleak and silly. Some of the best comedy bits in this movie. I mean, I will never forget the very moment when it's a straight flash cut edit to the three of them sitting on the couch with the tinfoil hats on. It is such a funny fucking moment. I don't know. Why do you love Signs? Let's go into that.
Signs. Signs is M. Night Shyamalan's best script. I don't think it's even close. This is the best writing he has ever done, which I recently learned from M. Night himself, that this is the second quickest script he's ever written.
Wow.
Other than his new movie Trap, which is now his quickest script he's ever written. But it's just phenomenal, to say that this is the quickest script he had ever written, up until this new movie, because it is so densely layered. Every character is so realized and so thoughtful. Mel Gibson is on another planet in this movie. That one massive monologue he gives, and he's saying when people experience something like this, they break into the two groups, and he goes down, and then he asks the question, so you have to ask yourself, are you a person that sees signs or sees miracles? Or think about it this way, do you think there is such a thing as coincidence? I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he says.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful monologue. It is so worthy of every eyeball that has ever seen it. It's just so full and so beautiful. The whole swing thing, it's so good. The water, I quote this movie damn near every day, because I'm one of those people that I never finish a drink.
Right.
I don't know why I'm like that. I just never do. Right now on my desk, there's a half-drunk bottle of Pepsi. And then there's the Monster I'm drinking. There's a Coke Zero there that I haven't finished either. And my girlfriend always asks me about it. She was like, why haven't you finished that? And I always just say, there's a hair in it. Or something like that. I love, it's contaminated. Right. I love saying it. It's funny. But I love how that fully comes all the way back around. I think, other than Praying with Anger, this is M. Night Shyamalan's best performance on screen. Yep. His whole little monologue in that car is some of the most powerful stuff in this movie. God, I love this film. I can't believe it. It is the funniest he's ever been. Yep. It is the most deep he's ever been. It's just beautiful. I can't believe someone has made such a cathartic movie out of aliens.
Yeah.
It's an alien invasion movie that is nothing to do with the aliens at all.
Yep.
And that one jump scare, of the tape that he sees, yeah. Oh my God. Scared the fucking shit out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah. For phenomenal. Me, the scene at the party is obviously amazing. I also love the roof jump scare. And then following that, Joaquin Phoenix and Mel Gibson running around the house and then essentially running into each other is one of the most this is odd situations in any of his movies. And the way that they approach running through the corn is terrifying and also silly. I don't know. Every single choice in this makes sense and is done in a way that just makes me appreciate him as a writer, as an actor, as a director that is directing for the eye of the actor. the empathy of a family growing up without a mother in this type of situation. The idea of religion playing into a huge part of this, like it does in so many of his movies. In a way, I'm not even religious anymore, and it affects so much of how you view Mel Gibson's choices and Joaquin Phoenix's choices, and the family just trying to not even thrive, but literally just survive together outside of the alien aspect, which now is a different, complete fight, obviously. Yeah, this movie is a literal perfect film.
Yeah, I mean, all the religious stuff in this film is great. I'm not religious, never have been, but I've always found religion to be a very interesting topic, and I think it has so much meat when it comes to characters, and I think M. Night also understands that, and he pours so much of that into this film, and it just works so well. With the swing thing, I love when he's talking to the army enlister or whatever, and then he's talking about the records, but then the other guy goes, he also has the strikeout record as well, and he basically explains, like, it's because I always swing, it always felt wrong not to. It's beautiful. The funny moment when they're running around the house and he's trying to tell him to like curse to like intimidate them or whatever, so he's doing the most awkward like post preacher cursing, and then when they finally meet up, he's like, I cursed, and then Meryl's like, I heard. Like, it's like so funny. But yeah, it's absolutely just gorgeous storytelling, gorgeous filming. All of it's great. The tension's great, the comedy's great. Perfect movie, one of the best ever made.
I agree. This is a damn good list for both of us. I'm so glad that we went with this. I'm amazed and very, very honored that you would stay up late tonight to discuss all this with me. And this is a long conversation. So
it has been, yeah. I've been worried about that. I'm watching the time go up, and I'm like, oh no, he's going to cut this episode.
Not at all. No, this is going to be probably a single cut. I feel like so much of this is important. I mean, Shyamalan doesn't get the love, but also the stuff that we talked about before that is, it's a part of modern film, and a lot of people just aren't discussing it, and I think it needs to be out there.
Well, very lovely to be here. I don't get to do these things often, except for the times that I'm dragged onto They Live by Film to talk about Fast and Furious or something like that. So, yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And now I feel like we kind of should plan another one for a handful of months from now, do another film.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I'd love to be on a live show also, just so you know, because I've never been on a live anything. So,
well, if you're going to be up late, we can do it. Unfortunately, your time, that's what, like 3:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, during weekdays anyway. Like, obviously, it's not going to be a weekday, but during weekdays for work, I'm already up at 4:00 anyway, so it's not that crazy of an adjustment.
We'll have to talk, because I think you'd be perfect for it.
Great.
All right. Well, as I said at the beginning, everybody go subscribe to Krit. And I mean, the first thing I'd say, go look through all the videos, and what catches your eye at first, throw those in your watch later playlist and give them the attention they deserve. They're not super long. They're perfect size, like bite size to watch one or two a day, something like that. But then go challenge yourself. Some of the essays that you've got up there are ripe for discovery, are something that I think people should be finding, and I don't know, opening your boundaries of what you watch or choose to watch, or rediscovering a movie that you thought was bad. Although I have a feeling that this discussion probably is going to ruffle some feathers for people that thought M. Night Shyamalan was bad. So
it always happens. It's fine.
Go rediscover the Shyamalan. But again, thank you for being on here, and we'll see you all on the next one. Thank you for watching The Disconnected. On the way out, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, that you've liked the video, and that you've copied the link to be able to share with someone else that may appreciate this.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.